Live from the frigid armpit of America, this is the Drunken Peasants Podcast with Ben and TJ, bringing you opinions of the news from an altered perspective.
Fuck it! Say, man, you got a joint? No, not on me, man.
I don't have facts to back this up.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
What the fuck you talking about, Atheist? It's okay.
You're nothing, TJ. You're garbage.
I just want to be liked.
You're garbage, TJ.
And now, here are your hosts, Ben and TJ.
We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Welcome to the Drunken Peasants Podcast. I'm Ben, and I'm here with someone who's about to say that he's not actually here and that I'm wrong. But his name's TJ. He's an ass.
That's not true. Actually,
I shut it down this time, didn't I?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what to do there.
Yeah.
I was torn because I'm like, do I buck expectations or do I just go with what he said and then look like I'm just predictable?
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that one earlier.
I'll have a retort by the time you try that shit next week.
Yeah, sure.
I have something stuck in my teeth, so the show is canceled.
Oh, shit.
Like, seriously, I just ate a fucking meat lover's pizza, and there's like a pizza sausage or something lodged between two teeth that's annoying me. So the show's canceled. So
Jesus,
everyone
man.
go home. Everyone out!
Most people are home right now.
Fuck them. I don't like their home. I don't even like being there. The thought of my beautiful voice even reverberating through their shitty room pisses me off.
Yeah, I imagine so. So, we have a guest tonight.
Nah.
No?
Nah.
No, yeah.
Who is it?
You know who it is.
Who is it?
It's your friend, VenomFangX.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're all right with him. You know what? For those of you who weren't around back in the day and didn't remember the feud between TJ and VenomFangX.
I was more of an outlier, though. I mean, like, it was really the main one was him, and like Thunderfoot would always go at it.
Right.
I was like one of the more like I didn't really care enough about him. Like Thunderfoot's like he's the poster boy for creationist stupidity, and I'm just like, well, I mean, he's a poster boy for he's a poster boy for creationist stupidity, but he's not the poster boy for creationist stupidity. I mean, come on.
You and him were supposed to have a debate, and it never actually happened.
Well, no,
right?
because he said that if I cursed, he wanted the debate to be family-friendly viewing, and I said, well, I'm not really family-friendly, and he's like, well, you have to be, and I'm like, well, I'm not asking you to change anything about your fucking self for this debate, so why do I have to change my shit around?
I just wanted to play a few old clips of you talking to VenomFangX for people who have never seen these before.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, boys and girls. Amazing Atheist here. Just a brief announcement for those of you who have not seen the video featured on my channel. VenomFangX debate has been postponed, not canceled as he insists, simply postponed. The thing is, of course, the spin on VenomFang's side is that I'm too cowardly to face him, which is, of course, what I expected. And it just goes to show VenomFang's complete lack of character once again. But that's fine, and we're gonna, that will come up in the debate when it happens, which will hopefully be sometime in the next week or so.
But it never happened.
Yeah. So. This is crazy.
We couldn't agree on terms, man.
Well, yesterday he told me he's already agreed to come on, and I was communicating with him about an hour ago. So he's supposed to come on. So
did you agree to fillet him, Ben?
No.
Because he tried that shit with me.
He didn't.
Yeah, he did. He's like,
shut up.
TJ, if you suck my fucking dick, I'll debate you. And I'm like, Venom, I'm just, I like some dick, but yours is just weird looking. It's all spiky. I don't like it.
How did you know what it looked like?
Well, if you know Venom Fang for 5 minutes, you're gonna get a dick pic. He's always sending those out. That's just his nature. He's just like, bam, dick pic.
He's on like chat roulette or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
He's on all those sites.
Let's
Chatterbait.
Do you want to bring him on now?
Sure.
Okay, we'll bring him on now. So
Ben's like, bring him on before he hears that comment.
I know. Yeah.
Calling. What's with the exclamation point there?
I don't know. Hello, Sean.
Hello.
Shan. Is yours, I forget, are you the S-H-A-W-N or the S-E-A-N, Sean?
I'm the H-A-W-N.
Okay. That's good to know. So what's on your mind tonight, VenomFangX?
I honestly have not a lot on my mind. Trying to keep clear because I have no idea what we're discussing tonight. No subject.
Well,
was,
neither did I. I was going to let you set the tone, so you made a mistake by clearing your mind. You should have filled your mind with everything possible so we could just talk about it.
We were just talking about how years ago you and TJ were supposed to have a debate and it never happened.
That's true.
And
I always asked him, "Hey, let's have a discussion. Let's have a debate." He never stepped up to the plate. So
No, that's not true. Because remember, you fucking kept saying that you wanted to have a debate with no profanity because you wanted it to be family friendly for the little kiddies to watch.
yes, and I still would desire that.
I know you would, but you're not fucking gonna get it.
Well, then I'm gonna have to leave, unfortunately. I wasn't
No,
aware that
don't
this was
leave,
going to-
VenomFang. You
wasn't
weren't
aware
aware
that
that
this
we were
was-
gonna curse on the show?
No, I've never watched your show before.
Aw, well, that's too bad. Hey, you know your friend, what's his name? G-Man. He curses sometimes. Yeah, he does.
I don't know who G-Man is.
Oh, well, you were on a little thing with him just last week. We played it on our show.
I don't know who that is. He may have been in the room.
Well, he's a black guy with a hat that says "I love Jesus" on it.
Sorry.
oh no, it's all right. You froze up for a second.
I said he's
there.
a black guy that wears a hat that says "I love Jesus" on it.
I talk with a lot of people. I'm sorry if I don't remember him.
Okay, well, it's okay. It's okay. I saw you guys were talking about.
If I can request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you request?
I just request that profanity be kept to,
All right,
as
all
much
right,
of a minimum
all right,
as
all right.
possible.
Well, I'll try. I'll try. I mean, I'm
appreciate that.
a foul mouthed guy, but you know what? If it's that important to you, I know we want to have you on the show here, so I'll try to contain myself.
Wow.
I appreciate
but-
that. Thank you.
Adam and Eve. I saw you guys were talking about that last week, and you were saying that Adam and Eve, they definitely understood the consequences of eating the fruit, basically. Well, no, you said Eve didn't, but Adam did. So
They knew they knew at least the word, the die, to the extent of what death was, or did they understand fully what death was? Might be speculative.
yeah, but I mean, like, the thing is, when they ate the fruit, they didn't just die. I mean, they got banished from the garden. There was all these other punishments
I would say
levied
that is
against them.
biblical death.
Well, okay, that's fine. So you're saying, like, death is more allegorical, but how were they supposed to understand that? Like, why weren't the consequences explained to them in detail? Like, don't eat this fruit because this, and this will happen to you. Why was it just a simple, like,
I can suggest
you'll die?
a few possibilities.
Sure, go ahead.
That moral coercion. So it's like, if I tell you not to do something, and then I give you an exhaustive demonstration or explanation as to what's going to happen to you if you do it, perhaps my explaining becomes the reason you choose not to do it, as opposed to, allowing you to make the heartfelt decision yourself. Because remember, this is an issue of moral obedience. And who did Adam and Eve love? Did they love God, or did they want to love something else? God wanted to give them the freedom without coercion to make that choice. And so if God gave them an exhaustive description of all the pains they would suffer if they touched or ate that fruit, you would think that would perhaps inform their decision.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you think that they would have just done it to avoid the consequences when they needed to make, like, a more pure choice of just, like, do you want this or do you want that?
I think that would be a fair. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Sorry, someone else is trying to call me. Let me set my thing to do not disturb.
Okay. So
yeah, very much.
here's a bit of a follow-up question. So when God put this tree in the garden, and he basically said you can eat from all the trees except for this one. Did he know in that moment that they would eat the fruit?
Of course.
Okay, so he knew the outcome before he made the decision.
That goes.
So
for,
how?
I mean, that goes.
So I mean,
for
I don't know. Right. So how does that? How is there really free will if God dictates the nature of man and then puts the nature of man to a test which he knows it will fail?
Okay. Well, free will is in upon the one to do what it is they do, and so God's knowledge or foreknowledge of one's use of free will by no means at all impedes upon it. So if God knows I'm going to eat something for breakfast tomorrow, his knowledge is not the cause of my eating
right.
whatever it is I choose.
But
knowledge is not a cause of anything. It just correlates.
But the thing is that he created the universe, so he could have had it unfold any way he wanted to.
Not
and
necessarily.
He knows. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean necessarily. He's all powerful. He can do whatever he wants. I mean, he created man, right? So
yeah.
Then he created man in this particular way where he knew that man would have this character flaw where he wanted to eat this fruit that he forbid them from eating. So why didn't he just create a being that wouldn't make that choice?
There's a few different things going on here. First, are you familiar with transworld depravity?
I'm sorry, you're really breaking up pretty bad there, Sean.
Do you want me to try and reconnect with a different connection?
Sure.
Really disruptive. Okay, sorry. Give me just a minute, and I'll reconnect, and hopefully it'll be better.
Okay. Thanks, VenomFang.
TJ, you really
fuck.
He's getting it out of his system right now.
Shit. Fuck. Ass cunt tits. How to get that out there.
I know. You were holding it in, I could tell. So, let's see here.
It's a lot different than arguing with G-Man.
Yeah, it is different.
Like, he actually will address things and, like, have a conversation. That's interesting, you know? That's a lot more interesting than someone who just, like, tries to, like, force you into having the answer that they want you to have so that they can proceed to the next part of their spiel.
Yeah. Looks like we have him back now.
Okay, cool. Calling.
Hopefully the connection's better. I apologize.
Okay. Sure, no problem.
No, it's no big deal.
All right, so the last thing I was asking about is, have you heard of transworld depravity?
No.
All right, it's the hypothetical situation where that in any possible world, I'm sure you're familiar in philosophy with possible worlds.
Right.
In any possible world where God creates moral agents with sufficient freedom to choose, in every possible world, there is some point in which a free agent will choose against God.
Mm-hmm.
In every possible world.
Right.
Okay, so that's not a flaw in either God's ability or in God's character or in God's nature. It's actually a flaw in the fact that man is not God, and man is not necessarily perfect, because God's nature being perfect, human nature is not.
So
God.
When you talk about
yeah.
when you're talking about the all possible worlds thing, do you believe that there are multiple worlds and there are worlds where man chose God and so on and so forth, or do you just believe there's just this one?
No, possible worlds just mean I believe this is the only actual world. So a possible world is not a world that actually exists. It's just an alternate possibility. So it's like it's possible that you understand, right? I can do one thing or I can do another.
I got you on that. I was just wondering if you actually literally believe that there were multiple worlds, because I, think that that's a distinct possibility. But what do you make of the argument that there is no free will because everything is just, determined causally? So there's really no mechanism for people to truly make a choice. It's just, your brain is a physical thing that is in your head, and the neurons fire based upon who knows what, and there's no real actual decision-making process involved.
Yeah, if the world is strictly based on materialistic cause and effect, so if the only thing that exists are materialistic objects which obey particular laws, so the physical laws, then I would argue, yes, if that is the way the world is, then the world is utterly deterministic. The only way to get beyond that is to have something that is not subject to the laws of nature with those laws, but is not subject to them. So something like the soul, I believe, causing or self-determining agent, which does not obey and is not under the laws of physics. Are we breaking up again?
A little bit.
Every now and then, but you're okay
Not
right
as
now.
not as bad as last time though.
Should I disable video? Do you think that would help?
You could try.
Yeah, you could try it. All right. Actually, I kind of had a question kind of related to what we're already talking about, and that has to do with prayer. So, Sean, do you believe that God's will is done no matter what, no matter how, whether or not a bunch of people pray for it or not?
No.
No.
Which will? I mean, God has different wills.
He has different wills?
There's God's permissive will. There's God's perfect will.
So it's like if I go downstairs and part of me wants a sandwich, but another part of me is like, no, I'll just have some chips. That's the two wills thing.
No,
it's
that's
not.
a contradiction.
It's not a contradiction. It's two different wills for two different things.
Well,
so
because it's your hunger, and
right.
there's a conflict in your hunger. So it's not that there's a conflict within God's perfect will or within God's permissive will.
So he has all these different wills, but somehow they all coalesce into one ultimate will.
I think that would be fair to say, yes.
Okay. So, I mean, like, I kind of struggle to see how they can have these autonomous wills, because, I mean, that kind of suggests that they would each have their own agenda, but then there's this ultimate will that is just one thing, and there's no conflict. Like, so you're basically saying, like, where in the Bible does it even say there's no conflict in the mind of God? Is that something that you could support scripturally, or?
I certainly think I could.
I mean, because it seems like God sometimes is indecisive, like, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and then, Abraham, I think, was like, well, what if there's 50 righteous men there? And God's like, well, okay,
exactly.
Maybe you're right. So, I mean, like, that was like something that didn't even occur to God. Abraham's like, well, what if there's some righteous people there?
I think that's a wonderful example of exactly what I'm talking about. So you have God who in righteousness wants to bring judgment. So his perfect will is that there's a group of people which he wants to bring judgment on, because God's perfection, when it meets man's sin, results in judgment. So that's God's perfect will. But there's also the whole, the mercy and the forgiveness. And so what you have is God through Abraham. I don't want to talk too much about biblical prophecy, at least not yet, but this whole idea of an intercessor, the idea of a man who stands before God pleading the case of man. This is all pictorial of Christ, who does the very same. These are important biblical types that show us, or that reveal more fully, what you refer to as the ultimate will of God, which is not simply to blast sinners and bring total judgment on them, but also to extend mercy and forgiveness to them.
So, I mean, like, how do you not see part of him wanting to destroy people and part of him wanting to save them as two contradictory feelings? Because to me, that's completely contrary. I mean, if any human being had those two different urges, you would say they're in conflict. But because you have this special God deity that you worship, you can say, well, there's no conflict there. It all just makes sense as one thing. But it doesn't make sense as one thing.
The reason it makes sense as one thing is because it's the same God working through Abraham for a very specific reason. And so, as you put it, God's ultimate purpose is to reconcile things like, yes, justice and mercy, which are indeed antithetical to each other, but they're not necessarily contradictory.
I mean, but you would agree that if I personally told you, as a human being, just like a flawed human being, if I told you, like, VenomFang, part of me wants to fucking kill you right now, just take you and burn you alive, but the other part of me just wants to give you a big old hug, would you not say there's some conflict there?
Certainly, yes.
Right, but if God says it, it would be strange. You're right, it would be. That's a good point. It would be very strange if I claimed to have those two different distinct wills, and yet somehow one.
What if? Okay, but let's keep this in mind. In your example, you're wanting to kill me, minus the vulgarity. Your desire to kill me, I assume, is not some kind of just justified.
Well, let's say that in my mind it is. In my mind, it's like I'm going to punish
Yeah,
VenomFangX for his sins.
Because in your mind, anything God does is justified, right?
I would say he does it because it's justified, certainly, yes.
It's justified because it's justified because it's justified, right?
Well, it's kind of like, is it good because God does it, or does God do it because it's good?
Right, the Euthyphro dilemma. That's the Euthyphro dilemma. I would simply say this. God's nature is good, and so anything God does is based upon that nature of his.
So, like when he kills the firstborn sons in Egypt, that's like a good thing.
Right.
How is it good? Like
because
how is it
about the Passover now in Exodus?
Right. How is it good to kill a bunch of firstborn kids?
First of all, there weren't necessarily kids. A firstborn can be any age.
Oh, okay. But a good portion of them were kids.
Some of them could have been born that day, right?
Certainly, yes.
Okay.
So if you understand the image of the Passover is one of the most important stories in the entire Bible, because it talks about how the blood of the lamb had to be shed, and that whoever trusted in that blood and put it on their door, the angel of death would pass over them. And so later in the New Testament,
and that's why I often call Christianity a blood cult. So,
well, this was
this
was Hebrewism too, right here. I mean,
Hebrewism. I'm not familiar with the phrase.
Well, I mean, it was Hebrews doing it.
Yes.
So what? But I mean, like, you didn't really address the question I asked, which is how is it justified to kill the firstborn of every family or every household?
That.
Okay,
right. Because this was a very specific event in history that happened to a relatively small community. So it wasn't a global event. This happened in Egypt to the Egyptians and the Hebrews.
Yeah.
Anyone who didn't have the blood on their door was, yes, the firstborn, as opposed to the entire family. The firstborn would receive the judgment. This was, as everything in the Torah, this is from the Jewish Torah, as you know, so the book of Exodus, everything in the Torah is meant to point people to faith in Christ, who is the fulfillment of all of these pictures. And I can demonstrate that to you in a bunch of different ways. So specifically with the Passover, Jesus died, he is the Lamb, and anyone who trusts in his blood, the angel of death itself passes over them. So Jesus is called our Passover Lamb.
The Jesus stuff didn't even happen at that point, though.
That's the point. Jesus hadn't come yet, so God was preparing the world to receive Jesus as the Messiah by showing all these pictures.
With some
the
blood
Passover
lubricant.
is one of them. Well, it's more like foreshadowing in a novel.
Right. Okay, yeah, I agree. It is like a novel. But how? So basically, it's justified because he only did it this one time, and it was only this one little small town. So
it's sort of like this: judgment is coming upon the whole world.
I mean, it's like
Egypt was a small test facility where God was basically saying, "Look, what's happening here is one day going to happen to the whole world, and this is the mechanism by which you will be saved: the blood of the Lamb."
Why does God need a test facility?
I'm using that as just a phrase, so we can.
Okay.
But I don't mean that necessarily as a.
So.
Maybe a better word could have been chosen.
My point is this:
God did on a small scale. God did on a small scale what He's going to one day do on a large scale, so that people looking at the small example can then find the salvation in the bigger event.
Okay. So it's basically he killed a bunch of kids to let people know that he meant business and Jesus is coming. All right. So
more like if you want to be saved from death, eternal death. Now we're talking about
death,
heaven and hell, that whole thing.
Sure.
If you want to be saved from that in the ultimate sense, you have to understand what happened at the Passover. So death was coming, the blood on the door is what saved them, just as Jesus, his blood is what saves us from that ultimate judgment. So he is our Passover lamb.
Gotcha.
But we can't understand what that means unless God first does a small example of what exactly a Passover scenario looks like. And so that's what we learn from the Exodus.
So it's basically just like a demonstration of God, saying like, I'm killing these kids, and I guess some adults too. And the reason why is you got to be prepared. The blood of the lamb. This is going to be happening on a much larger scale at some point. So this is a kind of an acclamation to this is what I'm going to do. I
think that's getting closer. Yes.
Okay. Cool. So how exactly does, I mean, like I talk to a lot of Christians, obviously, and they all have slightly different versions of how you get saved. How does, in the VenomFangX theology, how does one get saved exactly?
I think the Passover is a great place to begin. So judgment is coming. So we need to understand what we're being saved from. We're being saved from judgment. We're guilty. And
Okay. Well, let's pause on that for a second. So judgment. What exactly are we being judged for?
Sin.
Sin, right. So, and the origin of sin is kind of goes back to the Garden of Eden thing, right?
Right.
So, I mean, like, what exactly is sin to you? Like,
sin is anything. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sin is any act of a morally free agent. So, like an animal cannot sin because an animal is not a moral creature. So, it's a specific kind of creature, a moral creature, a moral agent who is in a moral relationship to God, choosing to do something which is against the moral character and nature of God. So, for example, God is truth, so telling a lie is against the nature of God. So lying would be a sin.
Okay.
That's an example.
So, okay. So I guess that, you know, if it's like, you said something about a moral relationship with God.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what if you're someone who doesn't have a relationship with God? Then you can just do whatever you want, right?
Well, no. No one initially, because of what happened in the beginning, has a relationship with God.
No one.
That's the natural state of man.
I
can give you a Bible verse.
Okay.
I can give you a Bible verse on that if you want.
So if I don't have a relationship with God, then how can I sin?
It is because you don't have a relationship with God that your relationship is classified itself as sin. And so everything you do.
Well,
everything
let me just,
you do apart
from
relationship with God is sin.
Like, okay, so why give me choice if I can't choose to reject God? Like, why does there have to be this tremendous consequence of you're going to, have this spiritual death and you're going to burn or whatever is going to happen to you? You're going to be tortured in hell because you reject me. Like, that's kind of petty, doesn't it seem like, okay, you don't want to go to heaven, you can just be a ghost or something, or just, go do whatever you want in the universe. Like, what's with the retribution? Like, why? What's with this whole choose me or perish sort of thing? It seems. It seems like kind of like arm twisting. Well, I'm just throwing out one thing. It's just one thing, really.
It's not. I can comment on like 5 different things that you've just said. I'm not even sure where to begin. First of all, there's 2 views of hell or the lake of fire, or.
Well, just tell us yours because we don't have time to listen to both.
Okay. Well, basically, there's the punishment model, which is exactly what you're describing, that God is going to seek vengeance and pour out his wrath on you. The other view is the consequence model. If God is life and goodness, being separated from him, the consequence of that is the absence of life and the absence of goodness, which would be, all the bad stuff.
Right.
And
but
so
I mean, I like life, I have a sense of goodness. What does God really add to the equation? Like, I don't reject life, I don't reject goodness, I reject the idea of your specific deity and his supposed rules for humanity.
Sure. Aren't you the one who wrote a novel that was called like In Defense of Evil or Why Evil
is
Good?
Well,
or something?
it wasn't a novel. It was a series of essays, but yeah, I wrote In Defense of Evil, Why Bad is Good and Good is Bad.
Yeah, there's a Bible verse that says, "Woe to those who call good evil and evil
good." I know. Actually, that
is
verse.
That what that was based on?
Yeah, that verse is actually in the opening chapter. That's actually where I got it from. Yeah.
Okay, so I just kind of revealed that I didn't actually read your book. I do apologize.
It doesn't matter. Have you read have you wrote a book, VenomFang?
No, I've not.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't read yours either, but that's fine.
I don't have one for you to read.
I know. I just heard.
Yeah. Okay, so what was was it a parody? Were you being serious?
Well, I was just kind of talking about how I guess I was kind of serious to an extent because I find there's a lot of things that I think you would find very moral that I kind of find immoral and disgusting. So I'm
sure that works both ways.
Right, sure. So I think that to my point of view, a lot of what you think is good is evil, and vice versa. And
can I read
same
you a
for
quote
you and me. Sure.
Sure. Can I read you a quote and you tell me if that maybe describes what you're talking about?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So it says the Barna Group found that atheists and agnostics in America were more likely than theists in America to look upon the following behaviors as morally acceptable or good. So illegal drug use, excessive drinking, sexual relationships outside of marriage, abortion, cohabitating with someone outside of the marriage relationship, obscene language, gambling, pornography, obscene sexual behavior, homosexuality, bisexuality. Would you? That's perhaps not an exhaustive list, but would you say everything I just mentioned there is good?
I wouldn't say everything you mentioned there is good, but I would say that everything you mentioned there is acceptable in certain circumstances, or, and some of it I would say is good. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean,
so yeah, I guess that is exactly what we were talking about.
But there's nothing there that I find completely objectionable in every way.
Okay.
And I'm sure that you probably object to every single thing on there.
Yes, I do.
Which one do you object to the most?
I would have to say all equally. I'm not going to have to. I can't pick one over the other.
So for you, like all those sins are just like on the same level. It's just like a plateau, basically.
Well, no, because there are degrees within each of them. I mean, there's marijuana
Sure.
and then there's cocaine. So it's like, that's not the same.
Yeah. I mean, I smoke marijuana. I actually smoked some before coming on the air with you.
I've detected a little bit of that.
Sure. You'd be a fool not to. I haven't done cocaine before the show, though. I'd probably be a lot more amped up. Like, Venom Pig, what do you think of this?
I would recommend you don't, out of concern for your health.
No. I agree with you. A big fat dude. You can't be fat and do drugs. That's a general
Chris
rule.
Farley.
Yeah, the Chris Farley rule. Don't be fat and do drugs.
Yeah.
Just do one or the other.
So let's refocus the conversation.
No. Let's go off on a tangent here for a second.
All right.
You're a big fan of the Joker. We share that in common.
Oh yeah, the Joker video.
I think he's one of the best comic book villains of all time, certainly.
Yeah, so I mean, like you even had some things where you dressed up like him. I've dressed up like him on my channel. I actually sleep two big Joker posters over my bed.
Have you seen my Magneto helmet?
No, I haven't.
He made a video
well,
with the
I'm turning on my
Magneto.
video.
Turn it on for a second. Let's see the Magneto helmet.
It's a sweet helmet.
Oh, that is
Right?
pretty sweet.
Right?
Fuck yeah.
There you go.
I like it.
So yes.
So
I
isn't
love
it
comic books.
right?
I love comic book characters.
Don't you ever feel like that's sinful though? Like certain things you read in the comics and shit, like doesn't it set off your little, fundy detector sometimes, like beep 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 beep?
Well, when evil is portrayed as evil within a story, I think that is, it's sort of like, the Bible even has events in it that are records of human evil. For example, men crucified Jesus.
Well,
so that
I guess I should be more specific. What I'm more talking about is like, obviously a lot of artists and writers tend to be more like progressive types. And I know that kind of stuff does get shoehorned into the comics sometimes. So I was wondering if like, you see like Captain America accepts a gay person in his presence and you're like, oh, fuck, Captain America sold out to Satan.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of like visceral, emotional, outburst. I would say, yeah, it's clear what the agenda is. Okay, they're trying to push a worldview through the comic medium, and that's
Sure.
to be expected.
But I mean, to be fair with that, though, I mean, like if you wrote a comic book, you would have your worldview in it.
Certainly, yeah. I
Sure,
think that's
yeah.
the beauty of artistic expression. We get to show the world through our eyes, through these incredible characters and colorful illustrations, and I celebrate that. I love artistic expression. I like to draw myself, and so yeah, I love, like I said, I love comic books. I love movies. I think it's great.
Do you ever like draw like religious comics, like chick track kind of shit stuff?
Nah.
Sorry.
No, not really.
No. Well, that's you might be missing out there. You have a new arm to proselytize with there. You could be putting out
true. I could,
and I could
guess I've
profit off it too, because I could make videos where I like take them and rip them apart, and then people would, that's more views for me, more views for you.
All right,
Win-win.
well, maybe
Everybody
we can work on
wins.
something. Yeah, maybe we can work on something. I don't know.
Maybe we could have a discussion in comic book form one day.
That would be
I could be,
interesting.
and we can leave it up to the people to decide who the hero and who the villain is.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that.
But I guess we can get back to the religious stuff since that's like the main thing you're known for. I think I wrote something else down here. Oh,
I've
this is
actually
just
got a few notes myself, so if you do find that you're running low on stuff, I could
no.
suggest.
I did actually have a question. This is kind of a sillier question, but I mean, it's something that always kind of has bugged me. And if someone knows or has at least some kind of answer, it's probably you. So Adam and Eve, and then Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel.
Who did he marry?
And then,
yeah.
Well, I mean, not only who did he marry, but he went to a fucking a town. He went to a town, and there's all these people all of a sudden. Where did these people come from?
You know, I think biblically speaking, not only is there an answer, I think the Bible is very sensitive to human interpretation. It's aware of what people are going to think, and so I think some of the details are quietly. Let me just make my point, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So in Genesis 5, let me pull up the exact verse so I'm not misquoting it. Many sons and basically Cain married his sister. Yeah, it's Genesis 5. I was right. Genesis 5 verse 4. It says, "After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters." And so Adam, how many sons and daughters can you have in 800 years? Probably more than a few, right?
Okay, so I mean, but it's kind of like incestuous, like
it's definitely incestuous, no question. But the law against incest, the forbidding of incest, was not given until Moses gave the law, which was about 1,500 or 2,000 years later.
Why would God kick off the species like that, though? Like give just two
I would
people
say this,
and just let them
makes us
multiply from there. So,
well,
so that we're all one family ultimately, or something, right? Okay.
Exactly. It's meant to create brotherhood among the human race.
It hasn't worked, though. We're pretty at each other's throats.
No, it hasn't. It's not that God failed. It's that man didn't appreciate that.
Oh, of course God didn't fail. He's always right.
Well,
you said
if you and I are brothers,
sure,
which biblically speaking we would be, we're one family. I mean, that does dictate, at least for me, that does dictate how I act towards you or anyone else for that matter. And so for me, it worked. It worked wonderfully. For you, well, you don't believe that we are one family, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, I still believe we're all one family. I believe we're all one family with every life form on Earth, as you know. But whatever. At one point, you said amputees don't deserve arms, and that's why God won't heal them.
One of the most misunderstood things I think I ever said. I suppose I should have been more careful to delineate exactly what I meant.
Explain how what you really meant there.
I simply meant that everything we have is not based on what we deserve, but it is a gift. Like, I didn't earn my limbs. I don't deserve. When I hear the word deserve, I hear the word earned. If I deserve something, it's because I earned it. It's what's owed to me, right? I don't deserve my arms. I didn't do anything to earn them. They were given as a gift.
Right.
Right? So if they're taken away from me, specifically by the one who gave them in the first place, I can't say anything about that. I mean, that the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord. Like, that's all I can say.
Right. Well, but I mean, like, don't you think that, there would be some responsibility the other way around? Like, if we're God's creation, shouldn't he take care of us since he's the one that brought us into existence in the first place?
Yes.
And
100%, absolutely.
Right. But shouldn't that also not be contingent upon us choosing
living in right relationship to him?
Right. Like, I mean, like if I tell my dad, go fuck yourself, Dad, sorry, or I do something like that, like, he doesn't just disown me on the spot, like, oh, we have a difference of opinion,
no, but if you're
so
a
therefore
responsible
this.
young man, let's say you're 18 years old, you refuse to go out and get a job, you're taking advantage of your father, you're eating his food, you're living under his house, you're not abiding by his rules. At a certain point, he is legally allowed to say, okay, son, you're not stepping up to the plate.
Sure,
at
a certain point.
In my house anymore.
But I mean, like, it seems like with your version of your deity, there's this expectation of, like, you either have to have this total blind obedience to what I say, or you're out.
No.
Okay, no. Well, but I expound on the no.
Sure. Well, you keep referring to Adam. So do you want to talk about Adam's situation, or do you want to talk about our own? Because we are in a decisively different situation than Adam.
Okay, well, let's talk about our situation.
Okay, our situation is that we were born into a separated state from God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and because of that, though God has provided a world and food and all that, not everyone has access, as you're aware, to food. Not everyone has access to health. Not everyone has access to a lot of the things which initially God provided.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that is because of what happened in the beginning.
Right. And I always kind of wondered, like, why is it that supposedly we're all punished for a transgression that none of us had any part of exactly? Like, we never made that choice. Right. I never made that choice. You never made that choice. It was two people in the beginning of the world who supposedly made that choice. And why are we suffering the consequences?
Who were those two people?
Sure.
It's an issue of, and the biblical word would be called federal headship. The idea is this, that in the very same situation, you would have done the same thing because Adam was the prototypical man. In a sense, he represented us all, and God being all-knowing.
Well, that kind of insinuates that everyone should think the same even now. Like, we should all make the same choices in any situation because we're all based on this same proto-man.
Well, we ought to have always obeyed God, like Adam ought to have done the same. So in that sense, yes.
So, but I mean, it's not like any of us failed this test because we never fucking took it.
I would say we all failed it in Adam, and then conversely, this is what the Bible says, in Adam all die, but in Christ shall all be made alive. So through Adam's disobedience, death came to all, but through Christ's obedience, life comes to all, or at least it's offered. So you have this, there's two ways God could have gone about this. He could have said every person lives and dies by their own sin, and then, and no one gets redeemed. If you sin, you're like an angel, you have no chance of redemption, you're damned. Or God can have the entire race fall in a single individual and then be redeemed by a single individual, and that's what God opted for. God had mercy on them all by virtue of them all being disobedient.
So I wanted to ask you it's kind of a little bit off topic, but it's sort of something that occurred to me. Why do you think people like me think the way we do?
From like a biblical perspective?
Yeah, I mean, well, just from your perspective. Like, what makes
I hold the biblical perspective, sir.
Sure, well, then there you go.
Okay, so what makes you think the way you do? Again, it goes right back to Adam and Eve. Can I read you a verse? I think it'll explain it.
Sure.
All right, so Ephesians 2:12 describes the condition of the natural man, the man who is just born into this world like everyone else. All right, so it says, remember in those days when you were living apart from God, you were excluded from the citizenship among the people of Israel. You did not know the covenant promises God had made to them. You lived in this world without God and without hope. So the condition, the reason you think the way you do is because you are separated from God. You've never known God. You've never had any contact with God. You are separated from God.
Okay. But I mean, like, I feel pretty happy overall. I feel pretty satisfied with my existence. I mean, I have my down days.
Nothing I just described bars you from any of that.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, if the absence of God is supposed to be this tremendous, horrible thing, and you're rejecting life, and you're rejecting beauty, and you're rejecting love, and so on and so forth, then, why do I still have those things? Why do I still feel good?
Because in the mercy of God, rather than just expelling you to the uttermost darkness, which will happen eventually to those who die without restoring this relationship, you're essentially in this, I hate using the word purgatory, but I think people it evokes the imagery of that time and place where there is no biblical purgatory. So let me just make that clear. I'm not a Catholic. I don't believe there is a purgatory. I'm just using it because I think commonly,
I think even they dropped that.
Yeah, maybe they did. I don't know, but I'm using the word just to help sort of just paint a picture for you. This life is a temporary testing ground, I guess. For you, it gives you a time and a space to make a decision. Do I want to return and be with God? Do I want God? Do I want a life with God or not? And God has given you this time and place to look around, to see what God has made, to see, you know, the stars, the sky, the waterfall, all that stuff, and say, you know what, the Creator's pretty awesome. I'd like to know him. Or conversely, go in the other direction.
I have a question about the whole test thing, you know, because like if you sit a bunch of school kids down and say you're all going to take a test, I mean the test is either identical or it's on the same comparative level of difficulty. But if you believe that this life is just a test, then I mean everyone is given a different level of difficulty. Everyone's given different exposure to different ideas. Everyone comes from different, you know, socioeconomic strata. So it really wouldn't be fair as a test, would it?
You're saying that not everyone has been entrusted with essentially the same amount of revelation. I think that's what you're saying.
I'm just saying that not everyone has the same opportunities or is exposed to the same ideas. So how can you really say, oh well, life is a test?
I would say this.
If this was a test, then it seems like it's a very whimsical kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the people who were born in Saudi Arabia have a lot less of a chance of passing this test than someone that was born into Christianity, I would think, in a you know, westernized nation.
Okay, I think you're definitely onto something. You're absolutely right that there's a great injustice in the state of the world. That we talked about earlier. Some people are starving. Some people are well fed. Some people are educated. Some people are not. So there's definitely a state in the world of great injustice, and I would not deny that. The Bible very much is aware of the injustice in the world. However, what we're talking about specifically is man's test. That is his relationship with God, is the simplest way I can put it. And so all people, in a sense, are born into the same condition, which is what I described earlier, separated from God. And every man is given a human nature. So all humans, I mean, if you believe in evolution, I guess you believe some people couldn't be more human than another. I don't buy into that. I think all of us are equally human. I don't know if that's worth discussing further or not. Anyways, so we all have the same human experience. Now, some people, yes, are born with, you know, mutilations or blind or whatever, or even mental handicaps. But essentially, the human experience, by and large, is the same. Being human is a singular experience which we all share, and that human experience, by virtue of being able to sensibly perceive and reason about the world, I think everyone, as the book of Romans says in chapter 1, everyone is accountable to recognize the bare minimum amount of revelation that God has given, which is simply that God exists and that he created the world. And that through the world itself, certain attributes of God, the invisible qualities of God, are clearly seen by what is made. That's actually a quote from the Bible.
Okay. I mean, I don't see them personally. Like, I look around.
Well, you said you love life, you love goodness.
Right, sure, I do. But I mean, I don't associate any of those things with God. I don't associate any of those things with
the failure to associate is the problem.
I don't think it's a failure to associate. I just don't think there's an association there. I think you have a problem with making associations totally
that's
unfounded.
Not there. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And that's the argument.
Right, of course, that is the argument. But I mean, let me just ask you, like, what like, have you seen God? I mean, like, what to you convinces you that there must be this God? Like, what if you could just give me like one thing that's just like the solid piece that just proves that there must be a God?
Yeah, here's the problem, TJ. You're trying to. I could ask the same question, like, about things you believe. Like, what is the one thing that makes you believe in evolution? And so you would spend a few minutes reeling to say, okay, what's this one thing? Is it a culmination of a bunch of different things? Is it my whole life experience?
You're right. It is a culmination of a few different things. But maybe you could just give me like a rough sketch answer of what, like, I mean.
I'm happy to answer. Don't. All right. Well, let me just. I'm hesitating.
Let me just make it like more specific. Like, have you seen God? Have you talked to God? Does God give you visions? Does God give you signs?
Okay. I would say this. I came to a point in my life based on life experience. So I believe I was led up to a point in my life where I recognized certain things to be true.
Right.
That began when I started to look at if the Bible says that man is made in the image of God, you're familiar with that. So I began to look at man, and I started to see in man something that I found unique, that was not in the animal kingdom, and that it sparked in me a wonder and saying, is there something to that? And so that started me on. Now that happened when I was 21 years old, and I mean, I had a whole life before then. I was raised in Hebrew school, and I claimed to be an atheist for a long time. And so, anyways, without telling you my whole life story, so there I am. I'm wondering about the image of God. I'm learning about Bible prophecy. I was raised Jewish, and so we were talking about the Torah a little. And so when I began to see prophecies of Jesus in the Jewish writings, and then it's. Evolution was definitely a big part of it. I came to the evolution was false based on not just because the Bible said it's wrong, but I was watching a seminar talking about some of the textbooks that I'd grown up with in the public schools, and it started pointing things out that I always assumed were true and demonstrated not to be so. And so I began to doubt evolution, and so a lot of things sort of crashed together at once.
Was this like a Kent Hovind thing or something?
Yeah, I was watching the Hovind seminars.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just clarifying.
Yep.
Do you think Kent Hovind was framed?
No.
So you think that the time that he's doing, he deserves to be doing because he broke the law?
Some people would argue that the IRS is unconstitutional and whatever. I'm not going to get into that because I really don't know. I'll say this: if he broke the law, then the Bible says that the governments are ordained by God, and whoever resists the government resists the authority of God. So if
so, I mean, like,
the law, then
so like, does that mean like these people who are like revolting in countries like Syria, they shouldn't be doing that? They should just be like, well, we just need to obey our government.
No. I don't mean it. I don't think you can take it that far. I just mean the general sense. The general sense is this: human governments are not to be, so long as they're just. Like Nazi Germany was an unjust government.
Okay, so you're not saying that just every government is good and
not a
ordained by
blanket
God.
statement.
Okay. Well, then that's fine.
Insofar as it does not violate clear biblical principles, I believe human government is a good and should be obeyed.
Okay, so what about when it does violate biblical principles?
So like murdering Jews or murdering.
Well, I mean, like just like gay marriage. That's the big hot button issue. In America.
We live in a democracy, right? So I think it is the right of Christians in a democratic situation to oppose what they feel is wrong in the framework of the democratic system.
Sure.
So as long as we legally go about resisting or revolt, whatever the word is, against certain laws or certain things in the society, I think that's fine. But it has to be done in a way that's
so
not
you're saying that
wrong.
as long as there's democratic machinery to possibly counteract stuff like that, then it's still a just system.
I would say so long as you're not in direct rebellion against the government, so long as it's, I think there can be governments worth rebelling against. We're talking politics essentially here, and it's a difficult subject.
Okay.
There are more politically minded Christians who would probably have put more thought into this. I don't like politics. It's just not my area of focus.
But I mean, like, obviously, like, to some extent, you have to delve into the political stuff just because, that's the machinery of society.
Yeah, it's irresponsible not to have some level of involvement. But I have no aspirations of.
You don't want to be like President VenomFangX. Well, you're Canadian, aren't you? You're Canadian?
I was actually born in America, so I actually don't have Canadian citizenship.
So you could be the President of the United States at some point, but you have no interest in that.
None at all.
So wait, what if Jesus came to you in a dream and said, VenomFangX, you must become the next president of the United States?
If he actually called him VenomFangX, that would be hilarious.
He would call him VenomFangX.
I would be pretty disappointed if he did, but...
Well, maybe they say that the power belongs to the people who don't want it, So.
I suppose. Anyways, if I was commanded by God to do something, and it was, of course, God commanding it, I'd do it.
So, okay, let me ask you about Abraham then.
I love the story of Abraham. I knew that.
Sure, he wants to. God tells him Yeah, let me just.
Okay,
he tells him to sacrifice his son up on the hill or whatever, and he takes him up there. And
actually, okay, let's
Jesse's
stop
about
there.
to do
He
it.
doesn't say sacrifice. He says offer.
Okay, but it was interpreted as sacrifice.
It's implied. Yes,
right?
It's implied sacrifice.
Sure.
But it's
and
an important point.
Abraham is got the blade, and then the angel stays his hand and says, "You don't got to do this, Abraham. It's cool."
Yeah.
And I mean, the violence of the story really doesn't bother me or anything like that.
Well, nothing violent actually happened.
I know, but I mean, like the implication of violence, that none of that stuff bothers me. What bothers me is the idea that if God tells you to do something that is in clear violation of every
Moral
ethical
principles.
principle, that you should just do it. Because even if I believed in God, I would object to that. Because you could easily if you believe in God, you presumably believe in other supernatural entities.
And TJ, that's why this story, perhaps more than any other story in the Bible, I feel is probably one of the most important. It's probably one of the most important events in biblical history.
Okay.
And I think exploring it carefully will help. Is one of the reasons. You asked me, why do I believe in God? Okay, so as a person who doesn't believe in God, you hear about the story of Abraham, you have this more emotional, moral objection to it. You say, oh, God must be this evil tyrant, whatever, and that's as far as you go.
Well, I don't even, I would say, let me just interject there that I don't even really think that. I mean, I do think that there's other instances in the Bible where, of course, to me, the fictional character of God is a jerk, but in this particular story, I really don't see it that way, and I've actually heard interpretations where people say, oh, well, if you really think about it, it's actually saying, it's about the end of sacrifice and not needing to spill blood for God and all this other stuff.
No, that's not what it is at all, because remember, it says that God replaced Isaac with a lamb, so a lamb was sacrificed.
That's the more like liberal theological.
I'm not a liberal, so
I know you're not. But I mean, I'm just saying I've heard some of these various interpretations out there. But my big objection is just the idea that you should have this sort of level of devotion where if God says, kill your kid, or whatever he said, you should go do it.
Okay, but is that what the story's about? Is the story trying to teach that if God commands you to do something immoral, you should do it?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not what the story's about at all.
Well, I'm not saying that's what it's about, but that's, obviously an element of the story. And in fact, I mean, there was a woman not too long ago that murdered a few kids and used that Bible verse
as an excuse.
Not an excuse, but as an inspiration.
Well, even so, I not only do I say this only to be generous. Not only do I doubt that God commanded her to do that, I know He didn't. And so,
let's talk about how you know that, though.
Based on the revelation of God, His character, His nature, His
but
purpose.
God works in mysterious ways, though.
And God's character and nature in the Bible.
Only to those who don't know His. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that God's character and nature in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, is a vengeful, jealous God. Correct?
I can explain again in relation to Abraham what that means and why it's important.
Well, let's just give you a few minutes for you to give your take on Abraham, so we have a little bit of a better idea.
I'd actually just rather interact with you because I want you to have this kind of aha moment.
Oh, okay,
which I
okay.
had.
I'm sure
Okay.
I will. I'm sure that's going to be like,
oh
my, wow,
but
God is
sort of
real. I see now.
No, that was my experience though. So I mean,
Okay.
I was raised Jewish, so the story of Abraham was right in front of me for 21 years as a Jewish person.
Right.
So the story I never understood. I had the same confusion over it too. God, why would you command this man, Abraham, of all people, the man who's called the friend of God, the one who, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, the Islamic faith, they're called the Abrahamic faiths, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So they're named after this man. So why would God command this man, of every other man, to offer his son as a sacrifice? Because God never commanded anyone else to do that, just Abraham. That's an important point to make. You with me so far?
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, okay. And so if we just ask the question, could there possibly be a reason, a good reason, why God would ask this man of all men to sacrifice his son? If we discover that reason, could we perhaps then switch from saying, oh, God, you're this evil monster, to saying, oh, God's actually brilliant?
Mm-hmm.
And if we do that kind of switch, which is what happened to me and what I'm hoping happens to you, you then begin to look through things like the Passover and the Exodus and all these stories which make absolutely no sense at first and then suddenly become extremely vivid and make tons of sense. And that's one of the reasons I believe in God, is because there's something in the biblical text which I didn't see before and now I do.
So the blindfold is lifted and you read all these texts through this new perceptive lens, and now you see. Yes, exactly. And I don't want to just blurt it out, but I did give you a little hint. So I was explaining how the Passover, God's going to judge the whole world, and so it's the blood of the lamb that saves them, and so that's a picture of what Jesus would later do. The story of Abraham. What is with God and killing lambs anyway?
Okay, well that's what the story's about.
Okay,
that's how the story ends. All right. I almost want to rewind and go back to Adam and Eve really quickly, if I may.
Go ahead.
All right,
Let's
so
jump
Adam
around.
and Eve, I think I have to. Just really, really quick. So God tells them, if you eat from the fruit, you'll die. So the punishment is death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So as soon as that happens, God actually kills an animal, it's assumed a lamb, and clothes them with its skin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then the next story is Cain and Abel. So Abel's a shepherd who offers up a lamb to God and is accepted. Then Cain, he brings his fruit and he's rejected. So already you have, from the first children of Adam and Eve, you have this idea of a lamb, a sacrifice is acceptable to God, but anything else is not. You already see that. So you fast.
God is no vegan. Gotcha.
Well, it's all about this idea of justice and punishment. The punishment for sin is death, and so it's death that pays for sin. Atonement.
Yeah.
Right?
So
so fast forward to
bad
Abraham.
lamb, sinful lamb.
Well, no,
died.
the lamb is sinless. That's the whole point. The lamb has no sin. It's an innocent party.
Okay.
And so it's the sacrifice is if an innocent party
gotta
willingly
kill innocent things for God. Gotcha.
Well, just one. All these lambs are a picture of the ultimate sacrifice. And so fast forward to Abraham. So you got this man who's called the friend of God. God tells him, take your son, your only son. Now, Abraham had other sons.
Mm-hmm.
But God specifically says, take your son, your only son. So I'll explain why that's important in a second. So God tells him to take his son up to a very specific place, Mount Moriah, which is a very important biblical location. I'll explain why as well. And the story ends with God stopping Abraham, and then a prophecy is given. It's Genesis 22, verse 13. Do you mind if I pull it up?
No, go ahead.
All right. I just don't want to misquote it. Now, when I talk to Jewish people, this is always what I bring up, and I ask them this question. Okay, so I'll read a few different translations because different translations render it a little differently, but it says this. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide, and to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Another verse or another translation says, in the mount of the Lord he will be seen.
Okay.
On the Lord's mountain he will provide. So anyways, there's this whole idea of the story. Abraham's called a prophet. And a prophet is someone who gives prophecy. A prophecy, you know what a prophecy is. It's like a foretelling or a revealing of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this story ends with Abraham declaring that this entire event that he was just put through, this drama, which he, I doubt, understood at all at the point. At the end of it, he looks back and he utters this prophecy and says, I get it now. On the mountain right here, one day God will provide something. He will provide something. And what is it that he will provide? Well, the story tells you. A father is going to offer his son.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so this is about Jesus.
Okay. So you're basically saying that it's more of that foreshadowing stuff, right?
Definitely. This whole thing, everything in the Torah, as I said before, everything is
it's all built into Jesus, basically.
It's a prophecy of him, yes. So when he arrives, he doesn't just say, I'm Jesus, I'm the Messiah, and then everyone just scratches their head and say, who? The whole point is God for thousands of years built up to his revealing so that when he finally arrived, people would then say, he was foretold, he is the one. God didn't just drop Jesus into a void. He actually built an entire religious community, Israel. He built a nation around this prophetic. I could talk about the Jewish feasts that the Jewish people would, do annually, year after year, Passover being one of them. Everything the Jewish people were, their entire Jewish identity and religious culture was built upon this prophetic revealing of the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Jewish person myself, I mean, that resonates with me because I was raised, we celebrated Passover every year. We knew about the story of Abraham, all these things, but we never understood what they meant. Like, what is the meaning of this? Why, what does the Passover mean? What's the point?
I don't know. I feel like some Jews would disagree that they just don't get the point of those stories. But
and remember I said this is what I talk to Jewish people about, specifically this verse with Abraham. I say, okay, so when Abraham says, on this mountain, specifically Mount Moriah, now that's where Jesus was crucified, just so you know. On this mountain, the Lord will provide. I ask a Jewish person, okay, what did God provide? When did he provide it? What does the story reveal about what he would provide? And what does it have to do with a father sacrificing a son? Because that's what the story is about.
Mm-hmm.
And the only answer, and now, I mean, I don't know how much time you guys want to. I mean, it's already 52 minutes, so I'm up free all night, but I don't know how long you typically go for.
We'll see.
Okay. So, do you know the story of Joseph?
Which Joseph? You talk about the
Technicolor Dreamcoat, the Broadway play?
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. So, if you read the book of Genesis, the story of largest portion of it, like you could say this, the story of Genesis.
Hey, you're breaking up again, man.
Has that been a problem throughout, or?
No, it's been pretty good, but it just happened just now. Just letting you know.
All right. I was just saying that the story of Joseph is the vast majority of the book of Genesis. So you could really say the book of Genesis is the story of Joseph.
I'm sorry, VenomFang. I had to. We were dealing with a technical issue for a second there.
Okay. All I was saying is that the book of Genesis is largely about Joseph. Joseph takes up the largest portion of the book of Genesis. So you could really say that Joseph's story is the emphasis of the book of Genesis.
See, what I guess that, I think a lot of this stuff is interesting. Like, I read, have you read any Joseph Campbell, VenomFangX?
You know what? The name is familiar.
He wrote a book called The Power of Myth. He wrote about mythology in general, and I find myths interesting. And, I kind of view the stuff you're talking about as an interesting myth, and I'm interested in it as mythology. But I just don't understand.
I think that's a good place to start.
Right, but I don't understand how you're convinced that it's real. I just don't get that part. That's the part.
Right. So what's the transition between?
I don't really grok that completely. If you know what I'm saying. I think we're gonna take a little break. Would you mind if we call you back in about 10, 15 minutes?
I'd like that. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
We'll be right back, everybody.
Fuck you, Bill Maher. Fuck you, Bill Maher. Fuck you. Fuck your mother in her fucking asshole. Go fuck yourself. That cunt is a douchebag, and I fucking hate him. He gets on his dumb fuck show and talks shit like that all the time. Fuck you. Fuck you. Oh, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck your mother.
Da 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 da. Shadows. Fucking shadows, Ben. Shadows. Ben.
Yes.
Say titty sprinkles.
Titty sprinkles.
Cool.
We're back. Yeah, I know. You saw my fucking face below my nose. Whatever. Fuck you.
They know what you look like, Ben. They know your face,
They got
Ben.
me now. They got me now. What can I say?
The YouTube mafia is coming
Yeah.
for you, Ben. They're gonna send you threats like they did to Anita Sarkeesian.
I'm just like her, so I deserve it, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, so we'll get Sean back on here so you can keep talking to him.
Sean back on.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
done with your smoke break?
Yep. I sure am, but I was only smoking tobacco this time.
Okay.
Is that permissible?
I would say not permissible for your health if you're concerned about
Well,
that.
I mean, but God, does God think it's okay?
Well, I think God would care about your body and doesn't want you hurting yourself, so...
Well, why not? You know, it's just a mortal body anyway. I mean, come on now.
Well, you know, your body's your temple, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. So he objects to it, but more just for like the health reasons.
I would say so, yeah. You know,
Okay.
some people can take that way further and be like, well, you shouldn't eat McDonald's because McDonald's...
Yeah. You could take it to a big extreme. Like you could say, I mean, being out in the sun too long could give you cancer. I mean,
yeah, it's true.
So you know, but I wanted to kind of get back to the good and evil thing. I was wondering.
I actually was just writing a ton of notes down. Like,
oh, really?
we're never going to be able to cover. I just was reflecting on everything we've talked about. I've got a ton of notes of stuff that we touched on, but then moved on quickly to other things. So I doubt we're going to be able to cover everything. Perhaps we could do this again sometime.
Sure. Yeah, I could see us having this discussion for a while.
All right, good and evil.
Yeah, good and evil. Do you still have that list handy?
Yeah.
You wrote a little list of like.
The quote.
Well, it was like things that I would find permissible.
Illegal drug use, excessive drinking, sexual relationships outside of marriage.
I was wondering
abortion.
if we could just go through that list and kind of talk about each one for a second, maybe.
Sure, if that's what you want to do.
That's what I want to do. Is that okay with you?
It's your program, dude.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. So let's. What's the first on the list? Illegal drug use.
Yep.
So I mean, why? I'm assuming that your objections to that are biblical. You say you have the biblical mentality or something like that. So what exactly is God's problem with illegal drugs?
Well, I mean that's the word there, illegal. So there's the issue of disobeying the government.
Right. But I mean, you agree that there are certain times when the government should be disobeyed.
Well, like the prohibition against alcohol. Again, I don't think we should illegally protest against. Everything has to be done in the proper etiquette and channel. So there is a way to protest, which is not against biblical principles.
So let's say I smoke some weed in Colorado or Washington, two of the states where it is now legal to do recreationally. Would there still be that objection there, or do you think
no? Because it wouldn't be illegal anymore. So I think in that sense, my objection would change.
Oh, okay. So what's
I would just say the first would be you'd have to ask yourself: is the substance I'm doing against the government, and how would that be as an example to others? Showing them that I'm breaking the law. Does that reflect well on me? Anyway? All those considerations.
Sometimes the law, though, you would probably agree is unjust and needs to be changed, right?
I think there's tons of human laws that are unjust. I mean, abortion is one of them. That's the next on the list.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Now, that is the law, too.
Well, in certain places.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, like, do you think that, I mean, let's just clarify your position here on abortion. I know we're kind of getting into politics again here with this kind of stuff, but...
Well, it's morality,
This is obviously a big moral issue for the Christian crowd, which you're a part of. Now, I'm assuming that you're against abortion in all cases, including, like, the rape and the incest and, stuff like that.
I would have difficulty in any situation advocating abortion. Yes.
Sure. So, like, what exactly is the issue there?
It's just the idea of ending a life.
Mm-hmm.
Life is sacred. Life is a gift. So I just think ending it prematurely.
You're just talking about human life here, because I'm assuming you're not like a vegetarian or anything.
No, just human life.
Okay. So, I mean, like, at what point does it become human life? Because, I mean, I know there's actually a part in the Bible where, I forget who it is, you probably will know, where some guy, he spills his seed on the ground and God strikes him dead for his...
Yeah, that has nothing to do with abortion.
Right, I know it doesn't have anything to do with abortion, but I mean, is that because that's life, or is that because masturbation is wrong? What?
No,
I mean, like,
that story is he was commanded to impregnate and carry on because it was his brother died, so he took in Jewish law, if your brother has a wife and the brother dies, you have to marry her in Jewish law to carry on the family name. And so he was refusing to carry on the family name by impregnating her.
Okay.
And so he was actually violating Jewish law.
Okay. But I mean, that seems like an unjust law as well.
I could comment further, but let's move on.
Sure, let's talk about abortion. So like it's the ending of human life, but like when does that life actually begin? Would you say it's the moment of conception? So you would be in support of things like what's going on in Colorado right now, the personhood stuff, where they want to extend full legal, human status to even just from the moment of conception, basically. The moment.
Well, what happens when you kill a pregnant woman? You're charged with double homicide. If the baby dies, it's considered a double homicide. Why?
I don't necessarily agree that it should be classified as double homicide. But
okay, I think it should. It's simply because that child, if left to the natural course of things, is going to be born and have a life. It's a living being, right? And so,
but I mean,
terminating
one of the things you talk about a lot is the ability of people to make choices. So shouldn't that just be a woman's choice? Whether you
could justify any choice that way. I mean, I could say I have a choice, so I'm going to murder you, or I have a choice, so I'm going to rape you.
You're basically saying that a woman who finds herself pregnant should be coerced into keeping that pregnancy for 9 months at tremendous disability to herself.
Not how I'd phrase it.
Well, I mean, it is a disability. I mean, you have another human being inside of you. Your belly bulges up. You can't fucking walk easily. Stuff like that. And then, of course, the process of birth is very painful and actually somewhat risky even now. So it seems like it's a strange thing to just require of someone.
I would say this. There are things required of all of us. Moral duties.
Okay, sure.
And I would say if you're carrying a life inside of you, you have a moral duty to God for that life. You are responsible for it. And so if you want to terminate it, if that's your choice, if that's what you choose to do, you will be held responsible. Have
you ever heard the philosophical argument of, like, let's say, this is a completely improbable scenario, by the way, but let's say that you got drunk one night. I'm sure you don't drink, but let's say you did. You get drunk one night. You wake up, you're in the hospital, and the doctors have rigged up next to you a famous concert pianist, and he's living off of your kidneys or something like that. And, he's going to have to do so for the next 9 months. Would you be morally obliged to let him do so?
It's a silly scenario, but I guess there is some, it's worth considering. It is a moral dilemma.
It is a silly scenario, but I mean, it kind of parallels what happens to a lot of women. They make a mistake.
Here's the difference. Here's the difference.
Wind up with a human life relying on their body to survive.
Yeah.
And they're under what you say they should be obliged to do so for a 9-month period of time. And actually, there's actually a more compelling reason for this life to be preserved, because this is a famous concert pianist. Whereas
Yeah,
every
here's
fetus
the
is just a
difference.
blank slate, basically. You never know.
Whoever
could be
hooked
the
up
next
this,
Hitler in there.
I hear you. Here's the difference. A woman, the whole system of a woman being impregnated and carrying the baby, that's natural, that's designed, that's how it's supposed to be. Whereas a person being artificially hooked up to another person, and I just don't see it necessarily as analogous. If I were to be hooked up to you or someone else, against my will, I was intoxicated or inebriated or whatever, and someone did this against my will and hooked me up, and I chose at that point to say, you know what, I didn't sign up for this. I still may choose.
Women,
I still may choose.
women who are raped are not, necessarily making that decision either.
I agree with you on that point, yes, but I still don't think that justifies aborting a child of rape.
Well, what if having to carry this fetus is actually a huge psychological detriment to the woman? Like, what if this is going to be something that fractures her psyche and tears her apart inside because she knows that she has her rapist baby inside of her?
All I can say is this: God designed. I mean, even if I want to just not appeal to God, it's not that I don't want to. I just want to be generous to you, because using a theological argument for you, who you're an atheist, so it may not hold the same level of force.
It's not. I mean, a lot of stuff you say is not going to hold the same level of force just because we don't agree. But I still want to hear what your actual opinion is.
Okay, I appreciate that. I still want to present it in a way that someone who doesn't even necessarily agree with me can. I want to find a middle ground where we still can find some commonality. Otherwise, we're just talking past each other.
Sure.
Okay, so I would just say this. I can use examples where children who have been born of rape have actually been therapeutic to the mother, in a sense.
I'm sure. I'm sure that. Look, I'm sure that is the case sometimes, but I'm talking
so
about,
what about the exceptions?
An exceptional. Well, I don't know what's the exception and what's the rule there, but obviously different people are going to have different reactions to that situation.
Okay, so let's create a hypothetical situation where the mother carries this child of rape and she goes through with the pregnancy, gives birth to a child, and that child is just a constant reminder of her rapist every day. And so she's reliving the trauma every time she looks at that child. I mean, that's about as extreme a scenario that I can think of.
Sure, but it's probably a scenario that does unfold with tragically.
I'm not sure if it does. It might. You might be right. I don't know.
Okay.
Number one, so if that woman were to, the child is now 2 years old, the woman has one of her traumatic flashbacks, she then takes out a knife and stabs the child. Is she guilty of murder?
Well, yeah, I would say so.
Right. So to me, that's no different than abortion. It's the same thing. She's just doing it earlier.
Or later. Or later. Well, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one problem I have.
Sure. But I mean, I think there's kind of an argument to be made that, if you're going to say, well, this fetus should have all the rights of a human being, then why not say that the individual sperm and the, zygote should have those rights extended to them as well?
Because they don't develop further. The sperm by itself and the zygote.
But they both have that.
The egg.
Yeah, they both have that potential, though.
Right, but it's only potential. Once the conception begins, once the egg and the sperm get together, now a process begins that, if left to its natural course, will indeed,
I mean, actually, a huge amount of pregnancies result in miscarriage too. So,
sure,
but
in that case,
that's just but even that's just a potential human being. And I don't know. I just don't feel like something that's never experienced the world, something that has no real sense of identity, just because it could at some point. I just don't see that to the same extent you do.
I guess I would say, because I think caution is better than. I just don't want to be held responsible for advocating or actually being guilty of the murder of an unborn child. If you're comfortable with that, then that's on you.
Have you heard the biblical argument for abortion?
Biblical argument for abortion? I don't know. Is there one?
Well, I can't exactly remember chapter and verse here, but I think
suppose some people have argued in the past that babies automatically go to heaven, so we should kill all babies so they don't have a chance.
I'm not going there with this. There's a chapter somewhere. There's somewhere where someone kills a pregnant woman, and they're not. Well, someone causes a woman to miscarry or something like that, and there's no penalty levied against them as though that were the same as killing a person.
I think I know what you're referring to, although I don't have the verse off the top of my head. So tell you what, I'm going to write that in my notes, and maybe next time we talk,
sure, maybe we
could
pick that back up. I'll find the chapter and verse too, so we can have a more full discussion on that. What's next? What's next on the list? Because we've kind of languished in abortion for a while.
Yeah,
now.
I'll name a few, and you can just pick whatever one you want. So pornography, gambling, obscene language, sex before marriage.
Let's just talk about all those real quickly. Pornography. What's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, the production of it. Sure, you've got an industry that thrives off of the exploitation. I mean, I don't know. I guess I just feel bad for. Again, I'm not speaking necessarily theologically. I'm just talking purely, humanly speaking, psychologically, whatever. You know, you got a lot of these young girls who, for whatever reason, are trying to get fame or fortune or just doing it for money, and then they've got to live the rest of their lives with this mistake they made when they were younger. I don't know. I feel like there have been a lot of pornography or women involved in pornography who years later just regret it like terribly.
Sure. I mean, that definitely is the case. I really can't argue with that completely. I mean, I think there's also some that don't regret it and some that actually get into it because that's what they want to do, is they actually want to be porn stars.
Yeah. Well, then there's just the issue of fornication. So sex.
Right. So obviously, yeah. I mean, so what's so bad about sex? I mean, God said, "Be fruitful and multiply." A lot of guys in the Bible have huge harems. Solomon had a gigantic harem. He had many wives.
Solomon was chastised for that, though, so he directly disobeyed. But specifically, yes, sex is a gift. Sex is good. I think every human being, for the most part, likes sex and should. But it has to be done within, like anything in life, it has to be done within the confines of a moral system.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, what is so immoral about two people who want to have sex having sex with each other?
I mean, it should almost be obvious. If two people want to have sex, does that automatically mean they should?
Probably, in my opinion, yeah. I mean, if two people,
I guess that's how the animals,
well, I mean,
that's how the animals do it, but
well, that's how I do it. That's how a lot of people do it.
I
mean, there's obviously, I mean, there's certain morality. I mean, there's no like, well, I want to have sex, so I'm going to rape you. I mean, everyone looks down on that sort of thing.
Right, so
people look down on
adults.
Coercion. Yeah, but I mean, like, if two people, genuinely want to have sex with each other, it would be pleasurable to both of them. Neither of them would be objectionable to it in any way whatsoever. Then what is the impediment there? Why is that wrong to do?
Okay, so I can give you a theological explanation, but before I do, let's just first talk about the child potential. So sex is made in such a way that it results in a child.
Well, it depends on what you're doing, but yeah.
Sure, but typically the way I was in a woman's study seminar.
That's hard to believe, but okay.
It's true. I just wanted to see what was being taught, and so I was stunned. Anyways, I don't want to get into that. The point is this: clearly, the design for sex is, without being too explicit, the male genitals seem to fit pretty well with the female genitals. Right.
Sure, yeah.
Those two,
I think we can all agree. There's other places that it fits well, though. I mean, I'm not. There's not. We don't have to. I mean, like, you could talk about we're supposed to do this, but I mean, there's lots of things that people do that are not necessarily like by nature's design. Like a huge skyscraper is not by nature's design, but I don't see you saying that's immoral.
That aside, my point is this: there seems when it's done properly, and I'll use the word properly in a specific meaning in a moment. Clearly, there's a result, and the result, I think, is the reinforcement of the fact that that's how it's supposed to be done. Mm-hmm. A baby is the result of sex.
See, like, to me, that almost seems like this is your punishment for doing it wrong.
Well, there is a punishment for doing it wrong. I mean,
wear a condom.
Let's talk specific. Well, condoms are a fairly new invention. I mean, people have made condoms for hundreds, thousands of years, but the modern condom is certainly much better.
Sure, yeah. Well, latex and all that other stuff.
So let's use anal.
I guess.
Let's just be blunt here. So anal sex, the Bible calls it sodomy, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
So sodomy, in
among
Romans
other
chapter
things,
1.
though.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, but sodomy is definitely a word to describe
Sure.
that particular
sure.
form
right.
of sex.
We agree.
Okay, so yeah.
I'm just saying we agree.
Okay, good. So sodomy specifically, like, why is it morally wrong? I think largely because, number one, it's not how it was designed to do. That's just not the design. Number two, it results in the highest form of, exposure to sexually transmitted diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a statistical fact. I mean, I don't think you would disagree with that.
No, I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, like, when it comes to the design thing, I've kind of, the same thing. I mean, there's plenty of stuff people do that's not exactly by design. I mean,
God designed the banana to be the atheist nightmare, therefore it destroyed TJ's.
That's the Ray Comfort. Is that the Ray Comfort?
Well, it's kind of a play between the Ray Comfort thing and something TJ did years ago that leaked online. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
No, I didn't. So spare me.
Okay, so you don't want to know? All right.
No, I don't. I don't think I do.
Has to do with the banana.
All right, I'll let my imagination.
But the banana actually is a good example because bananas in nature, we cultivated bananas to have that that nice seedless sort of easy form.
You hear how enthusiastic he is talking about this too?
But I mean,
Okay.
no, seriously,
So
like
are you
banana.
Are you asking?
I'm just saying, like,
for example, is it
Oh,
wrong
yeah,
to
I'm
modify
asking about-
nature?
Yeah, I mean, human beings modify nature all the time.
I think that was part of the command, actually. So be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over the earth. I think man is meant to take the tools of the earth and cultivate and modify within certain principles.
And I mean, in terms of the health stuff, I mean, like, there's obviously, the risks are higher. That's statistically true. But I mean, there's definitely precautions you could take to protect yourself.
Okay, so that's where then I would add the theological spin. So
Okay, so go ahead.
morally speaking, because I believe that there is a teleological design to everything. I infuse. I don't want to say as if I am the one infusing it. I believe that God infused the world with meaning, and so certain actions mean certain things, and so sodomy would be. It would mean something not good.
So basically, it just kind of boils down to God don't like this. I mean,
yeah, I would say that.
Let's just. I mean, have you ever seen that image where first it shows the Earth, and then it pans back and it shows the solar system, and then it pans back and it shows the Milky Way galaxy, and then it pans back and shows this, huge plethora of galaxies, and it pans back and shows the entire universe, and then it pans back further and it shows Jesus hovering over the whole thing saying, "Don't masturbate."
No, I've never seen that one specifically, and Jesus never said that.
Well, I know he never said, but it's kind of just a play on, like, would the creator of all this stuff really care where we stick our wee-wees?
In terms of sodomy?
Sure. Like, why would he care?
Or bananas.
Or anything else?
Here's okay. So, well, that's the whole question of deism. Is God involved? Does he care? Does he know? That sort of thing. And I would say if man is made in the image of God, and I think I'd want to explore exactly what the implications of that are, then the answer is yes, absolutely. God cares about absolutely everything we do.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, why would that act offend him so?
Okay, well, here's why. Number one, it's his nature. And so God being omnipresent, God has to live in the presence of things that are essentially offensive to his nature, character, morality, however you want to phrase it. Alternatively, if you understand, I like this illustration. I don't remember where I heard it, but it really resonated with me. You have this idea of, a king in a kingdom sometimes puts like statues of himself around the kingdom to show that, he's the one in authority.
Right.
Right. That's sort of my understanding of what man being made in God's image is. Man is basically the representation or the statue of God on earth.
Okay.
And so when man does things that misrepresent what God is like, it's sort of like an ambassador of a king misrepresenting his king by either saying or doing things that are, that don't represent the king properly.
Well, then he shouldn't have given us free will, right? I mean,
Well,
if
okay, so
if God
again, going
look
back
if
to that,
but if God didn't want us to be having sex with each other in the butt, then he should have just made it impossible to do so.
okay, so then
Or
let's
not
add a
even
little
appealing.
caveat.
I mean, look, there's plenty of things that don't even appeal to people. Like, it would never appeal. Like, okay, some people this would probably appeal to, but it's like, you wouldn't, stick your genitals in a blender or something. That's like, that would surely be a defiance, but there's no appeal there. There's nothing.
Well, there's certainly, I mean, there's the whole pain, right?
Sure.
Excellent.
But I mean,
Sure.
most people are not going to go that far with it.
And some people do like pain sexually.
Sure.
A lot of people.
Right.
Honestly.
There's
Okay,
masochism.
well, that aside, let's reel it back to the whole idea of why would God create a world. And you know what? And this brings me to a note that I made. TJ, you asked, and I'm not derailing the conversation. I'm trying to be as focused as I can. You
Sure.
asked, why do I think that you think the way you do? Which made me wonder if maybe part of your atheistic persona, the amazing atheist and all the things you do, you essentially, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is my interpretation of you, you exist to be antithetical to God in the sense that everything you do, the more against God you essentially are a living, in your own mind perhaps, you yourself are your best evidence against God. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I wouldn't go that. I mean, I would actually kind of agree with the closing statement you made that I am my own best evidence against God, but I would have a different line of reasoning.
I just mean, is that your
there.
motivation for what you do? So,
well, look,
so it's like, if God is for this,
I mean,
I'm going to be against that.
Because look,
why would
I mean,
God
look,
create that?
From my perspective, even as a kid, like I never really, people talked to me about the God thing. I never really bought into it, but I was very fascinated by it because other people were so enamored with it.
Right.
But I mean, I've never like set up like I'm going to be antagonistic towards God. I actually think that a lot of the stuff Jesus talked about was very in keeping with my own value system. There was stuff he said I disagreed with, but I think that stuff about being charitable and kind to people in need and stuff like that. Those are all things that I think are wonderful and great values. So it's not like I'm just looking at Christian theology and saying, I'm going to do the opposite of that. It's just that my path in life has taken me in a very different direction than that. And
I was just talking about motivation, though. I just mean, do you...
In terms of motivation?
You said that humans choosing to do things like sodomy or whatever, you presented it in a way that it seemed to be so antithetical to the nature of God that it almost seems to refute the possibility of God's existence, because why would God create things that do the opposite of what he wants?
Well, that is a big question of mine.
Right.
I mean,
so,
obviously, look, as an atheist, I have my answer, and my answer is that there is no God, and he doesn't care what we do because he's not there. But I want to know. But I'm very interested. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm wondering if you're concluding that because of the things that are antithetical to God, such as either your behavior or the behavior of others.
No, I wouldn't say that's part of my conclusion. But what really leads me to conclude that there's no God is that every time I've ever asked you or anyone else for some sort of compelling reason to believe, I've never found the answers that compelling.
We could do a whole talk. I mean, maybe next week or whatever. If you want to just do a whole program on me trying to convince you, like I'll throw out every argument I possibly have, I'd be happy to do so.
Well, maybe that sounds like a good time. We should probably do that at some point.
There was one thing I wanted to ask Sean. Sean, do you believe that? Actually, I already know the answer to this, but I think I just wanted to ask
questions to which you already know the answer.
You believe that humans and dinosaurs lived together on Earth at the same time, correct?
Yes, I believe they were contemporaries.
And you use mythical dragons as part of your evidence for this, correct?
I would say the fact that every culture seems to have dragons or to be aware of dragons seems to suggest they couldn't have just all made them up. I mean, it would be as strange as every culture on Earth separated from each other, so without influencing each other, coming up with the same, like coming up with Superman. Like how is that possible?
They came up with similar creatures, but they weren't all literally named dragons. I mean, the Chinese
it's
had
not about the name. It's about the design of the creature. Giant reptilian animals.
A Chinese dragon looks different than dragons from European lore.
Right. Chinese dragons
Certainly.
are like longer and more snake-like.
But you also can't escape the similarities.
And I mean, like, well, I mean, the thing about it is there was vampires.
Yeah.
Vampires are another thing that's been documented in many different cultures, and werewolves. That's not just that's not a story that just comes from one place.
I would challenge you to show 2 or 3 cultures separated by time and place, and you'd have to sort of demonstrate that they didn't have any form of contact with each other.
Sure.
Coming up with these mythical creatures autonomously, without any influence from the other cultures. If you could do that.
Well, sure, I could probably do that.
I still okay.
But
I'd
I mean,
be
like, you
interested.
could you do that with dragons though?
I would say dragons are so prolific, you literally can't find a culture in history
I mean, like,
that
look,
didn't have.
Here's the thing. Have you ever
I don't know if the Native Americans had dragons. I'd have to look that up.
I can show you some specifically. Yes, they did.
I don't. But here's the thing, though. Regardless of all that, there's an interesting thing about. Have you ever heard of, like, people throw out different numbers, but they say there's only like a certain amount of stories out there. And actually, in any kind of story, there's only like so many
you mean
stories
like
that you could actually tell. Not even genres, but just the specific narratives that exist. There's only really a few if you actually break them down.
Okay.
And I kind of also think that way. I mean, actually, in Stephen King's book, Dance Macabre, he talks about how there's only about 4 or 5 different kinds of monsters.
Okay.
So I think that, you know, like, human beings, as you've pointed out, we're born into sort of the same experience to an extent.
So you think from that experience they all conjured the same imagination?
Right. I think that I think we do kind of have a sort of shared imagination. Actually, if you go back to the Joseph Campbell stuff I was referencing earlier, he basically compares different myths from different cultures and finds these amazing similarities between them. So I think there is sort of a human predisposition towards certain types of mythology. That's probably why...
I wouldn't disagree with that. I would, however, say that just due to the prolific nature of dragons, there is nothing akin to it. Not werewolves, not zombies, there's literally nothing as like the dragon. You'll find dragons in pottery, you'll find dragons in architecture, you'll find dragons in cave.
But I mean, here's another thing.
I mean, it's amazing.
But I mean, another thing is that, you know, we've discovered dinosaur bones in our time. Yeah. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that they discovered those same bones and extrapolated what the creatures look like.
It's certainly possible. Although,
I'm just saying, I don't think the dragon thing is like nail in the coffin, case closed.
No. I wouldn't call it a nail in the coffin.
And you don't agree with things like carbon dating or anything either, right?
Yes, I agree that it can be useful and accurate when employed within certain parameters.
Mm-hmm. There are several different types of...
Right, it's not just carbon. There's radiometric.
Right, carbon has a maximum half-life of about 50,000 years, so they typically don't use it for things that they believe to be older than 50,000 years. They'll use, potassium argon. Or...
Do you think the universe has even been around for
50,000
years?
Yeah, like, I was just going to ask him, how old do you think all of existence is in years?
I believe it's about 6,000, although I also believe, because time is relative, I think it's possible for other parts of the universe to be much older than, like, the center. If you've looked at like the white hole theory.
Here's another thing. I'm sorry we're kind of jumping around, but I keep thinking of stuff I've thought of over the years, and it's kind of interesting to see your take on it. And this is another thing I've always kind of wondered about. The biblical creation story. I know that you believe it to be literally true, right?
Yeah.
You believe that God created the world in 7 days.
6.
Well, really 6, because he rested on the 7th day. So why would it take him 6 days just to create this planet
Yep.
And then there's this vast universe that's so much bigger than this planet out there. And also, I'm assuming you believe that this is the only planet with life on it.
Yeah.
Why this vast cosmos that's so huge and so large if it's all just, if it's all just for us?
Okay. You asked 2 questions. So why 6 days? And then why so vast if there's nothing else?
Yeah.
So I'll answer the second one first because it's the easiest. Psalm 17, I think, says, the heavens declare the glory of God. So we look up and we go, okay, he's pretty powerful.
So basically it's just to demonstrate the might of his creative abilities.
Right.
So, why would he restrict himself to just one planet with life on it then? Why wouldn't he seed life throughout the cosmos?
Specifically, it has to do with man, the importance of man, who man is, what man's destiny is.
Couldn't he just plant man everywhere?
Right. Couldn't he just put
and here's
man
why.
all over the place?
If he did, hold on, my mother just came. Would you be able to excuse? Would you be able to excuse me for a minute?
Sure.
All right. I apologize. I will be back.
No, it's okay.
As quick. I'll just send you a message. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
VenomFang, take out the trash! Take out the trash, VenomFang!
I guess while we're waiting for him to come back, do you want to play a video?
It's almost pointless at this point, but sure.
I guess we could just...
you want to just show that animation that guy made?
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Just why don't you take down all the stuff so we're not obstructing the view?
Okay.
There we go.
All right, let's see. Okay, here we go.
Kill TJ!
Kill TJ!
Kill TJ! Kill TJ! Kill TJ! Kill... Oh, damn it.
I suddenly want to kill TJ.
Yes. Kill TJ. 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 Kill TJ.
Yeah, I couldn't come close to that.
So how much could you give me for it?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Porn stars is funny.
Like I said, it's just not the merchandise itself.
Girl TJ! Oh! Girl TJ! Girl TJ! Girl TJ!
Oh, shit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh God. Oh yeah. Ow! Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh.
Ben, did you ask him to animate all your sexual fantasies about me? Is that what's going on there?
It's a secret. Okay, I think Sean's ready again.
Good.
All right.
Shaun of the Dead.
Hello. Sorry about that. I hadn't seen my mother in some time. She just came back from vacation.
That's all right. We just played a quick video that I'm sure you would be glad you were not a part of. So
okay.
Anyway,
so what was I talking about? All right. So you asked 6 days and
right.
why not humans everywhere?
Yeah, why not seed them all over the place?
Okay, here's the problem. There's that issue of the human race having that unity. So like if we had different lineages, there would be more than one human race, and so there wouldn't be this one.
Well,
there wouldn't be one race.
What if we're spaced so far apart that we'll never even encounter each other?
Well, that's the problem. That's actually the problem, because if one of those humans sins, then God has to become part of that race and redeem it. But the problem is he can only do that once.
Okay.
And so if one
can only do that trick once.
Not
Why
so
can
much
he
trick.
Why can he only do that once? I mean, I would think God could do anything as many times as he wanted to.
Okay, here's why. Because if Christ becomes a man, he dies, he rises from the dead. Now what he does is he ever lives as a man. So Christ is still incarnate and will be forever as a member of Adam's race. And so that's why his redemption for Adam's race is eternal, because he will remain part of their race eternally. If he was to leave, if he was to cease to be that, all of Adam's race would be lost.
Okay. I don't get it, but that's fine. We'll move on. 6 days. Why 6 days?
Okay, each day, Bible says a day is 1,000 years. It's a little hint. So 6,000 years of human history. Each day of creation is pictorial or prophetic of 1,000 years of human history in advance. Okay. And so the seventh day, or the 7,000 years, is going to be the 1,000 years of...
What? Did we lose him?
Not yet.
Am I still here?
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, we got you.
Yeah. I was saying each day is a representation of 1,000 years of human history in advance.
Okay.
So human history will finish in the 6,000th year and then enter into 1,000 years of rest.
How old was Adam when he died?
930.
Why did people live so long then?
Sort of like, trying to think of an analogy.
Because
the analogy.
Because we know people like 1,000 years ago didn't live even close to as long as we live now. So why such a differential?
I think it has to do with the world before the flood had increased oxygen levels, as well as some people posit a water vapor canopy which protected against UV light. And I think part of the reason we age, part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason we age poorly is because of exposure to UV light, which breaks down the body, is not able to repair the damage over time.
Well, couldn't we test that just by isolating someone from UV light and trying to recreate the conditions that you posit?
Certainly. If we put someone in a situation where they were never exposed to UV light and lived in a hyperbaric oxygen situation where they had more oxygen, I suspect they would live a lot longer.
What about people who live, very far north who have, a shorter daytime at some points? Shouldn't they statistically live longer?
Again, I'm not sure how dramatic a difference the UV exposure is. Maybe it is dramatic. I don't know. I think oxygen has a lot to do with it. I think it probably has more to do with it.
So people who live at lower altitude should live longer than people who live up in the mountains because the oxygen is different.
I assume so, yes.
I don't know if that's statistically true. I don't think that we see people that live at sea level statistically live longer than people who live at high altitudes.
I might want to look into that.
Okay.
Hey, I have a question. Let's kind of get back to the whole universe thing. So let's say tomorrow man makes contact with an alien race. Would you say that race must be a satanic deception, or would you have to reevaluate your theology?
Let's go with your hypothetical. Let's say we did encounter an alien race that was genuinely an alien race.
Sure.
Right? I mean, if it was uncertain, then yeah, I probably would conclude it was demonic in nature. But if it was with certainty an alien race, if we were observing a planet that clearly had, its own indigenous life forms, would I have to rethink my theology? Not necessarily. If they had intelligent life, possibly.
Right. So what if there's some scientists posit there might be life on one of Jupiter's moons, Europa. Let's say we were to go there and we discovered that there were bacterial organisms feeding off of the oceanic
that wouldn't cause
thermal vents.
That wouldn't cause me any confusion, really.
So you would just say bacterial life can exist elsewhere, but not advanced life forms.
Simply, I think the biggest confrontation to the gospel would be the idea of there being intelligent life forms, and by intelligent, I mean like on our level.
Right.
rational creatures, self-aware,
or hopefully
language.
hopefully beyond our level. But like if you were presented with that, that would deal a blow to your theology, or would you just have to reevaluate your understanding of the Gospels, or how would that work exactly?
I would definitely say it would cause a confrontation with the main principle of the gospel, which is man was made as a unique creature on this planet with advanced intelligence, such that he was able to be aware and conceptualize God. And so if we were to find another being on another planet with that ability, that would cause a serious problem for the biblical theology.
Okay, well, I hope that happens then. Actually, I already hoped that happened anyway, but that's just another reason to want it. But then again, I guess Stephen Hawking says that the aliens might just want to colonize us and wipe us out like we did with the Native Americans and shit. So maybe it's not such a good thing. I don't know.
If you don't know what next to talk about, I could suggest a few things.
Go ahead. You go ahead and throw something out there.
All right, you asked. Let me just mention some of the things we've talked about in passing that we didn't really get to spend time on, and maybe you can choose which one you want to talk about.
Okay.
You asked, how does a person get saved? I never really got to explain.
Usually it's just accept Jesus in your heart and all that. So is that your basic shtick, or you got something else?
The Bible never says accept Jesus into your heart, so I reject
Well, I
that
mean,
utterly.
you know. So okay, so what is yours then?
I think there's two sides to it. There's like the human component and the God component. So there's something God has to do, and there has to be an appropriate human response.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm not saying the human response is what causes salvation, but I think it is the result of it. Like, you will see this effect in a human being if they are indeed saved.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how is a person saved? God has to redeem that person. So a price has to be paid. That's the cross. Jesus dies, takes the punishment.
Right. Sure.
Okay, and then the person has to be, you've heard of a born-again Christian?
Sure.
Right, so the person has to be born again. God has to literally give the person a new birth.
Right.
Okay, so that's something God does.
Not literally, though, because...
No, yes, literally.
No, not literally. Because a literal birth would mean literally passing through a new, vaginal canal and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what the rabbi said to Jesus in John 3. He said, how can a man be born again? Does he have to pass through his, the womb again? So the response is no. You're just thinking of a flesh birth. There are other kinds of birth.
Okay.
So it's still a literal birth. It's just not a flesh.
We'll have to agree to disagree on that one.
Well, let me just give you the quote. So Jesus said, "Flesh gives birth to
Oh,
flesh."
I'm sure he said that. I'm just saying I don't really.
And spirit
agree.
gives birth to spirit.
Okay.
So
Spirit
think about
gives birth to
this.
Spirit. I mean, I don't believe. I mean,
Right,
I
so
believe that my spirit is basically a culmination of physical processes. I mean,
Which is not a spirit at all.
Well, no. I mean, we human beings are imbued with a sense of spirituality, but I don't think it actually corresponds to anything in reality. I think it's just a sense that we have.
I would say this, based on, the body makes a distinction between spirit and soul. So it says that we are body, soul, and spirit.
Okay.
And so you would say that we're just body, and maybe you would say that the awareness of the spiritual is a mental exercise, but not, like you said, it doesn't correspond to a reality.
I view spirit and soul as basically the same thing. And to me, I have a soul in the sense that I am more than the sum of my parts, as many things are. Like a car is not a wheel. A car is not even the physical object. I mean, there's the physical traits that make a car, and then there's the things it does that make it a car, like move forward and steer and all those things. And I think of that as being my ability to move through this world and formulate ideas and have a consciousness and have a sense of the world around me and to have a sense of my place in it. To me, that's my soul, my spirituality.
I understand. The Bible says that the Word of God is so precise that it can actually make a distinction between soul and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that distinction is important, at least for if you want to be saved, because you need to understand the mechanisms.
So Getting back to the salvation thing, let's say that I come to you and say, VenomFang, I'm tired of being a sinful atheist heathen. I want to be saved. What must I do?
You have to believe the gospel.
Okay. So step 1, believe the gospel.
I'd have to explain the gospel.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, the gospel is that God the Son became a man, that he died on a cross and was risen on the third day. He's alive today. And if you go to him, in confession and ask him to save you, confess him as your Lord, he promised to save you. So by putting your faith in him, he will do the saving. He will
Should it be belief with 100% certainty without a shred of doubt whatsoever?
I don't know what percent, if it works in percentage. You either believe it or you don't. I mean, you either believe Jesus is who he claimed to be.
You can side. It's not just black and white like that. I mean, I'm sure there are people that, they're on the side of belief, but there's still a doubt there.
Biblically, there's a guy who prayed. He said, "Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief." So I think there's certainly some truth to that. But there does come a point where you either say, "I believe this," or "I don't."
Mm-hmm. So let's say someone is like on the first steps of that spiritual journey where they're kind of coming around to belief, and then they die. Where do they go? Heaven or hell?
If my understanding of what belief or true faith is, it's a gift from God. And so I don't think God would begin to give someone the gift knowing that they were going to die and not make it. I think he would give them the time to fully enter the faith.
Okay. I wish I could come up with a specific example to the contrary. I'm sure there have been some, but I can't pull any out, so I'll just move on from that. What else did you have there in your list?
I had a quote which I thought was interesting. Tell me what you think of it. So it says, atheistic experiences can be explained theistically, but theistic experiences cannot be explained atheistically.
Well, give me an example of a theistic experience that can't be explained atheistically.
Okay, so this whole idea of, I used to be a pretty hardcore atheist, and I've clearly had a very strange experience because now I'm on the opposite side of the fence. And so,
right.
And it was Kent Hovind that triggered this experience for you?
No, I wouldn't attribute it to him. It was while watching his seminar that a few things culminated for me personally.
So you were watching him.
I was watching him, yes, but I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to him.
Okay.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's sort of let me put it this way. Some people have watched my videos and reported, okay, they've now had a conversion experience. But I'd never say it was because of me. More than likely what it was is I read a Bible verse or I said something that was just what they needed to hear in God's timing. So I think it's sort of a collision of human, earthly interactions and events with whatever God's doing invisibly.
Okay.
So I don't attribute my salvation to Kent Hovind.
Okay, so let's get back to the quote. You say that the theistic experiences can't be explained atheistically. So give me an example of such an experience that can't be explained atheistically.
I think maybe I would want to add a genuine theistic experience cannot be explained atheistically, which is, I guess, self-explanatory. If God genuinely does something.
Sure. I mean, anything that's not genuine can, of course, probably be explained otherwise. But give me an example of one that you feel is genuine that atheists can't really address.
I don't think that's what the quote means. I mean, an atheist can address anything from any point of view. I mean,
Sure. Well, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, the quote's basically saying that, any atheistic experience that I have, you can explain theistically. But any theistic, any genuinely theistic experience that you or anyone else might have can't be explained atheistically. So I'm just asking for an example of something that I should just be unable to explain, and maybe I would be unable to explain it, but would anyone be unable to explain it is the question. And I'm struggling to think of something that has no other explanation but God.
Okay, I mean, I think one of those things. So we were talking about like Abraham and the Passover and stuff. I think there is stuff in the Bible that if I gave a proper exposition of, while you may be able to offer an atheistic explanation, I don't think it would be a satisfactory one. I think that's the best I could offer.
But I mean, that's just kind of subjective. Like I can say that.
And that's the problem with any explanation. I mean, again, you can explain anything from any point of view. If you want to explain something away, you can always do that.
Right. Sure. I agree with you there. I mean, that is a problem.
Okay.
But I mean, that's
maybe the quote's just not worth spending much time on.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much merit to it simply because of the problem of subjectivity and what is going to satisfy different people. What else you got?
Can I ask you a question? Do you feel the existence of God is unproven and unprovable? That's a quote. Some people say the existence of God is unproven and unprovable.
I would say that if there is a God, we should be able to prove that he exists.
Okay, somehow. I think that's cool. All right.
I don't think it's I would not say unprovable. I would say unproven.
Okay. Would you say you know with certainty that God does not exist?
No.
No, I would not say that.
Okay. So would you say let me think how to phrase this. Okay, what justification then is there for a commitment to atheism?
Well, I think there's I think that
commitment.
Do you know what an unfalsifiable hypothesis is? Unfalsifiable hypothesis. Like I could say, I mean, if you ask me, can you say with 100% certainty that there are no leprechauns? I would still say no. I absolutely can't know for certain that there's no leprechauns, but I can say that I lack a belief. I would say that I find the possibility so remote that I can say that I don't believe in leprechauns.
Okay,
and I
but
believe
would you commit to it to the degree of, you're called the amazing atheist. Would you call yourself the amazing leprechaunist? Would you go to the extreme of debating people who?
If billions of people believed in leprechauns, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, if
God is then in that sense unique from leprechauns.
Well, he's unique in the same sense that Allah is unique, or any of these other gods that have existed throughout history, and that people actually believe it on a widespread level. And my being an atheist,
general theistic claims are.
But my being an atheist,
the problem of religious pluralism.
My becoming an atheist is really more about a reaction to Christianity as a social institution.
Okay.
Rather than theologically.
I would reject Christianity as a social. If that's your experience of it, I'd reject that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because Christianity ought not to be a social. I mean, that's just not. It's not appropriate. That's not biblically what it's supposed to be.
Well, that's what it. I mean, but I mean that is a component. Regardless.
Yeah, and I mean they have these mega churches with tens of thousands of people.
I think mega churches are. I mean, like Joel Osteen. Are you talking about or?
Well, I mean, obviously him, Benny Hinn, those kind of people. They fill stadiums. They do these weird faith healings, speak in tongues, all that stuff.
Yeah, all of that is, in my opinion, demonic. So, I mean, that's a largely held. Yeah.
So okay, so I mean, but if you're saying that that's demonic, right? I mean, would you assume that anyone who calls themselves a Christian, but does that sort of stuff, is actually hellbound and not really a Christian?
It has more to do with what they're doing is not biblical.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, you by your own criteria of salvation, they've come to Christ. They believe they're worshiping Christ. So I mean, is it just? I mean, if they went to hell for that, would that just be the case of being punished for a poor a poor understanding of the theology there? I mean,
I think Jesus said, many will come to him, you've probably heard this before, who say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do this? Didn't we do that? And Jesus turns around and says, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who do evil. I seek those who do the Father's will, that sort of thing. So there are many people who call Jesus Lord, give him lip service.
The problem is, though, that, I mean, these people could turn right around and say, oh, well, it's actually this guy, VenomFangX, that has it all wrong, and he doesn't really understand what the Scripture really means.
Sure, anyone can say that. So the measure is, of course, the proper interpretation of the Bible, which is the responsibility of every individual to study.
But
and
every single person is going to have a different interpretation.
No, because there's going to be a lot of people who agree with Joel Osteen, and there's going to be a lot of people who agree with me. So,
there's going to be a lot of other people who have a lot of.
Is
other
there a
opinions.
chance that both of you are wrong, though?
Let me say this. Forget me for a moment.
Okay.
The question is this: is there a proper biblical interpretation? If this is all contingent upon the idea that the Bible is truly God's word and true.
Yeah, sure, okay.
All right, so if the Bible is true, just to be generous to those who do not believe it is, if it is true, then it follows that there is a genuine interpretation.
Sure.
And and then it follows that those who do not follow its correct interpretation are wrong.
Sure. But are they?
Which is not, yeah.
Is it really? But I mean, is it really sinful just to be wrong, to make a mistake, to not interpret things the proper way?
Yes, to the degree that Joel Osteen does it, yes.
Well, I'm not even talking so much about him, because most of those guys, in my opinion, are charlatans. I'm talking about the people who are in the audience, who feel it, who feel like the salvation, who genuinely hold this belief in their hearts that.
Oh, listen, I think there's probably tons of people. This is the same thing I was talking about with Kent Hovind. I think there's probably a ton of people who go to a Joel Osteen seminar or watch him online, who God has encountered them at that point in their life, and they've come to faith in Christ. I think there's probably a lot of people who have genuine conversion experiences all the time in a lot of bad churches sitting under bad teaching. I think that's totally possible, and I think it happens.
Okay.
So I've heard you say before that, and this was years ago, maybe your position's changed. You used to say that you believed that the Catholic Church was the whore of Babylon, something that was biblically spoken.
Yeah, the harlot of Revelation 17.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that? And do you still hold that position?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what makes you think that?
There's I want to be as concise as I can because it's sort of a lengthy thingamajig. So I'll just recommend a resource called The Woman Rides the Beast by Dave Hunt. It's on YouTube. It's a 55-minute exposition of Revelation 17, and then it talks about the history of the Catholic Church, how it's responsible for a lot of bad things, and the biblical description of the harlot. It sits on 7 hills. That's Rome. Its worshippers are clothed in scarlet, and the golden cup, the chalice. So that's like the Pope's thing. It's just the description's right on. Again, I'd recommend Dave's Hunt. It's the Woman Rides the Beast.
I see. And the version of the Bible that you adhere to, is that the King James version or something different than that?
I believe the King James is a valuable translation. It's not the only one that I use. Like, I have an ESV that I like. The original Bible was not written in King James English. So the original manuscripts were, Hebrew and Koine Greek. So I don't think it's certainly not a biblical position to take that the King James English translation is like the only God-ordained English translation of the Bible.
So I when it comes to the Bible stuff, I mean, do you ever, what was that? Do you ever have you studied like ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek so you could read it like in the original tongue?
Yeah, I mean, I was raised Jewish, so I was raised with
you kind of
basic Hebrew vocabulary.
So you got some basic Hebrew. What about the ancient Greek?
Yeah, I did Greek 1 and 2 in my university studies.
Was that specifically so you could read the Bible in its original language?
Uh-huh.
Did you gain any sort of new insights by doing that?
Well, I mean, I've got my Greek New Testament right here, and so I've got a bilinear, so you can see the English compared with the Greek, the original, and I know how to check that. So it's new insights? No. The only thing it's done is it's shown me I can trust the translations, that the people are not like purposefully distorting the text, that they're just translating it.
What do you think about? I mean, and What is your take on the books that were included in the Bible versus the books that didn't quite make it? Because I mean, this was just something that was decided by by men. You can't even argue that God had a hand in it. It was really just edited by the whims of kings and high priests, many of whom...
To say that God was not involved in the process sort of removes the sovereignty of God. Over history and men. So.
Well, but I mean, you're always trumpeting the free will thing. So I mean, I think,
but not when it comes to God's direct intervention.
So
God will not.
So
yeah.
So you wouldn't put any stock in like the apocryphal text then?
No.
Things that weren't included. But
There's
I mean,
a reason they weren't included.
Well, they weren't included because very often for political reasons.
That's not a full view. I mean, there are criteria that were used to judge whether something was to be considered.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the times the criteria was like, oh well, His Majesty doesn't like this passage, so let's not include that book. Yes, yeah. I mean, if you actually read about the way the Bible was cobbled together, then yes. I'm sorry, but yes.
I'm going to have to disagree with you. If you really want to, get into this,
all right.
we could debate it.
Well, maybe we'll save that for another one because that could be a long debate.
The basic criteria, if I may. So, number one, it has to the text itself has to claim divine revelation. So, if the text doesn't have, "Thus saith the Lord" or "the word of the Lord said," many of the apocryphal books don't even have references to God.
Right.
And so, there's no reason to consider them divine revelation because they don't claim to be divine revelation. So that's one problem. Another problem is there's no
well, plenty of them do though.
Not in the Bible.
No, not in the Bible. But I'm saying plenty of the apocryphal texts do, make those references.
Okay, and so
Thus
then the
saith the Lord, and so on and so forth.
Right, and so then the next, criteria would be: does it contradict what already was established to be God's word? So things like the Torah, like the first 5.
I mean, well, there's
those.
I mean, you'd have to admit that there are plenty of contradictions in the Bible as it exists now.
Do you really think I'd admit that?
Well, I mean, you'd have to. I mean, there's certain things that are just impossible not to see as contradictions. I mean,
all right,
certain things.
So let's,
look,
I
certain
guess
things.
That's where the conversation can go for a moment.
Certain things you could find some. Well, it says this, but what it really meant is this, and you have to look through it through this historical lens and see it this way.
What I'm going to call an apparent contradiction. What apparent contradictions do you feel are so irreconcilable?
I mean, well, there's conflicting. I mean, there's certain points in the Bible where characters. I mean, sorry, not characters in your mind, but historical persons are given. Okay, well, certain characters have different genealogies depending on where you read them. Okay, so you're talking
about like Matthew and Luke, the genealogy of Joseph versus the genealogy of the one given in Luke?
Sure, stuff like that. And I mean, and I've read, I already kind of have an idea about the kind of stuff you're going to say because I've read
I'm just going to say one's for
refutations.
Joseph, one's for Mary, so...
Okay. Well, I mean, there's plenty of stuff like that. If you go,
right,
I mean,
can you show me an explicit contradiction? That cannot be reconciled.
Did you see the video where Ray Comfort had to pay someone $100 based on contradiction in the Bible?
No.
Would you like to see it? I can play it for you. I'll share screens with you.
I'd be more interested in just hearing what contradiction it was.
Well, there's a contradiction in the video, so let's just watch that real quick.
Yeah. I'll share the screen with you so you can see it, and I'll pull it up here. Hold on.
We're just getting things ready on our end.
Okay.
Did he return it to the Pharisees, or did he keep it and buy a piece of property?
Oh no, they bought the piece of property. Read it carefully. He threw the piece of silver down.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. Okay. I already know which apparent contradiction they're using here.
Okay. So we'll just let it play out. Then you can let us know how you feel about it.
Okay.
And they
the other version says he himself purchased the potter's.
Oh no! Show me the chapter and verse.
I don't have it on me. Do you?
I will give you $100 right now, cash.
Where's your Bible?
Someone give him a Bible. If you can tell me where Judas. We got a lot of. You bought a Bible.
$100 cash on the spot.
Seriously, he gets $100 cash if he shows me where Judas purchased the field with his own money.
I have a challenge.
$100
right here.
It's right here on camera. Now, this man, not now the Pharisees, now this man acquired a field with the price of his wickedness. Oh, sorry.
Let me read the description.
I hope you got cash on you, Ray. You have a room full of witnesses. What's the reference? There's more witnesses here than there were in Jesus' resurrection, that's for sure. Right? At the door, so what's the second?
So what is the contradiction you're saying?
You're saying the Pharisees, in the other version, the Pharisees buy the field. In this one, Judas buys the field with the money he kept. Did not return to the Pharisees.
So who bought the field?
Judas.
Judas bought the field.
And in the other version that you were quoting, the Pharisees bought the field.
Okay, I'll give you $100.
All right.
So what do you think, Venom Fang?
I think it's a clever misuse of the text. So he cornered Ray. He got Ray to contradict himself. He didn't necessarily get the Bible to contradict itself. So I think what Ray's doing is he's paying.
So who bought the field?
He's paying the money because he made a mistake.
Who bought the field? The Pharisees or Judas?
I'm pulling up the verses so that I don't want to make the same mistake that Ray made.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll just kind of do a little humming thing while we're waiting.
All right, so it's Matthew.
Okay.
Yeah, so Matthew 27, verse 3, it says that Judas brought the 30 pieces of silver back to the chief priests and the elders, and then the chief priests purchased the potter's field with Judas' money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so I guess the other verse, I'm not sure what the other verse was. Do you know what the other verse was?
I don't offhand. I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, I think it's Acts 1:16. So it says,
okay.
Judas, who became guide to those who arrested Jesus, for he was counted among us and received his share in the ministry. Now this man acquired a field with the price of his wickedness, and falling headlong, he burst. Okay, so it's, that must be the verse. So Acts chapter 1:16. So 1:16 says that this man, Judas, acquired a field with the price of his wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
And then Matthew 27 says that the chief priests, so Judas returned the money and then bought the field with that money.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so I think what the mistake that Ray made was that he claimed that the Bible does not say that Judas purchased the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was paying the goods on that because he misstated that.
Right. He even goes on to say that he still doesn't feel there's a contradiction. But, I mean, he still paid the bet just because,
because he's a gentleman. Because I think he did misrepresent what the Bible teaches, and so he did owe the guy $100. That's fine.
But
I don't think there's a contradiction either.
I mean, it does seem kind of like in one version Judas is paying for the field, and the other version the Pharisees are paying for the field. But I guess you could say that, well, they just didn't mention the part about the Pharisees in that other verse because ultimately it was still Judas that was acquiring it through his wicked deeds at any rate. So I can kind of see that one.
Matthew 27 is talking about the actual events, like what happened, whereas Acts 16 isn't even trying to talk about the historical events. It's actually making an argument, which has nothing at all to do.
Do me a favor, Ben, and pull up Skeptic's Annotated Bible, and let's go to the section on contradictions, and I'll try to find one that I feel is concrete, can't be refuted.
Yeah,
definitely
I'd like
a contradiction. One that is impossible to say.
Irreconcilable.
Right, irreconcilably a contradiction. All right, so
here's the thing. Even if I mean, I'm not sure if I have an exhaustive mental library of how to reconcile every contradiction. So I would just caution you that even if you came up with something that I wasn't immediately able to get the answer to.
I can understand that. Even if it stumps you, that doesn't necessarily mean it would stump everybody. Let's talk about something like real concrete. Like, click on that one. How many sons did Abraham have? Something like that.
I need to pull up a verse, or I'd need at least, if you could tell me which verses it's referencing. At least
all
I
right.
could
Well,
look them
let
up.
me. This is let me. I haven't checked this contradiction out myself yet, so let me just take a look at this. Okay, so Hebrews 11:17 says, "By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, his only begotten son." And then in Genesis 22:2, "Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, and offer him."
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, and I also told you he had other sons. So Ishmael is another son.
So why in Hebrews 11:17 and Genesis 22:2 they reference Isaac as his only son?
Okay, it's because of the prophetic nature of what was happening. So God would offer his one and only begotten son, and so Abraham in the story.
But we're not talking about God here. We're talking about Abraham.
Yeah. Right, but
remember, you can't just symbolically change. You can't just symbolically change the number of kids that someone has when you're talking about something that's supposed to be factual, and say, "Oh, well, that's just to make it a prophecy."
Well, that's the thing. It's not Hebrews that begins that tradition. It's actually the book of Genesis, which has Abraham taking Isaac, and God says, "Take your son, your only son." But Ishmael was born before Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
Even within the narrative of Genesis. And so the tradition of God specifically saying, "I'm going to consider right now Isaac your only son," when you understand the reason is because it's showing that one day God will sacrifice his only son. The story of Abraham,
who was also him.
Well, we could talk about the Trinity if you want to.
Let's
go on.
Well, let's talk about this contradiction here.
Okay.
Hebrews 11.
It's not a contradiction. Is because
Hebrews
Abraham
11:17
in a prophetic
ministry.
ministry.
But Hebrews 11:17. "By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, his only begotten son."
Yeah. Right.
"Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac."
Right. It's quoting
and
Genesis.
Offer him there for a burnt offering.
Yeah, it's quoting Genesis.
So there's all these references to the only son, his only son, Abraham's only son.
Yeah.
And yet he has more than one son. He has other sons.
What I'm saying is it's highly intentional, and so there's a reason that's easy to understand why that is the case.
It's easy to understand for you because you have this, twisted little narrative where it's like, oh, well, that's just because it's symbolic for what God did later. It's a prophecy.
Okay, well, here's what you're saying. You're saying that I have no merit in interpreting it that way.
Yes.
I can show you many cases in the Bible where that is clearly the case.
Let's talk about this. You'll probably just attribute this to God's many wills, but here's another contradiction. God wants everyone to go to heaven versus God wants some to go to hell. 1 Timothy 2, 3, and 4.
Who desires all men to be saved, yeah.
God, our Savior, who will have all men to be saved. And then in 2 Peter 3:9, "The Lord is not willing that any soul should should perish, but that all should come to repentance."
Yeah.
And then we have Proverbs 16:4 that says, "The Lord God hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil." John 12:40, he says, "He hath blinded their eyes and hardened their heart, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their heart, and be converted, and I should heal them." Romans 9:18, "Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will hardeneth."
Right. So Romans 9.
Hold on, one more. 2 Thessalonians 2:11 and 12. "God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned."
Yeah.
So
the response is this. That
hold on. Let me just kind of summarize the contradiction here really quickly before you address it. In the first two verses we presented, God wants all men to be saved. In the next four verses we present, it seems that God intentionally actually obfuscates the truth from some people so that they may not be saved.
Mm-hmm.
So let's address that.
Okay, so the solution's actually in Romans 9. A proper method of biblical interpretation is you never take one verse out of its context and try to build an argument or a theology on it. You sort of need to take the larger, what does the Bible say about salvation as a whole? Romans 9, which you quoted, is one of the most, I guess it's one of the most explanatory verses in terms of what God's doing with salvation and redemption versus damnation and all that. And so what you have is two groups of distinct people. You have the vessels of wrath and the vessels of mercy. Okay, and I think the psalm there also referenced the wicked, for, who are being prepared for the day of wrath or the day of evil. Okay, so you've got these two groups which God separates entirely and makes a distinction between. And so if you actually read the first two verses you quoted, God desires all men to be saved, or that he desires none to perish, it's referring to which the Bible calls God's elect, a specific group of people which God desires to save.
The master race.
And so God desires, I wouldn't call them the master race, but God desires all.
I'm calling them the master race based on what you just said.
They're
No,
elect.
so basically you're saying, when God says all men, he's only talking about a few special men. So it's really kind of just deceptively presented there.
Well, there's also the if you look at the Greek word for all, so it can be translated, and there are translations that say that desires all kinds of men to be saved, meaning, and the Bible says this later in Revelation, people from every tribe, nation, and tongue. So there will be representatives of every ethnicity.
But most people are going to hell.
Yes.
So, I mean, like, God is kind of a miserable failure in a way.
Because he'll save exactly who he wants to save.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point, is like you create this entire species of organisms, subject them to an inherently unfair test, and then say, well, I'll just choose a few of you to join me in my magical sky kingdom, and the rest of you can just languish in eternal suffering.
Well, the kingdom's not going to be in the sky. It'll be on Earth. But beyond that...
Okay, well, whatever.
The test is not unfair because, again, the test...
No, I mean, well, we've already discussed why the
that.
test is unfair. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to say it is fair.
Well, again, the test was in its purest form with Adam. So Adam was in a situation where the only thing he had to do was not eat a fruit. I mean, he could eat from every other fruit. And so Adam, because of the ease in which his test, was, and the fact that he failed that, and the fact that he was the federal head of the human race, thereby representing all of us, I would say it's not unfair. In fact, it is the most fair thing that if man chooses to be without God,
it's the most fair. So you believe that a world in which most people who are good, in my opinion, are destined for eternal despondency. You believe that is a fair world created by a just God.
If I agreed with you about the good part, then we would be in agreement. Obviously, I disagree.
Well, I mean, I think most people are basically good. I think that there's...
You said you believe most people are basically good. Yeah,
right. I think there's a sense of... I think there's a
definition?
sense... Okay, well, my definition of good is empathy towards your fellow man. Desire to reduce suffering. How is it arbitrary?
But isn't that arbitrary?
How is it arbitrary?
Well, because I could arbitrarily choose the opposite. I could choose
what's really
suffering.
Right? Sure, you can choose a number of things, but I think that we all agree that there's a certain vested interest in choosing to be empathetic and kind and to care about our fellow man, because that leads to a better social state for all of us.
So really, that's just an argument from popularity.
Well, yeah, it is an argument from popularity.
That's a logical fallacy.
Weren't you talking about earlier about how the belief in God was?
If you really want
to
talk about, yeah, I mean, you kind of put that out there, but I mean, if you really want to talk about arbitrary, I mean, the whims of your God are completely arbitrary.
No, they're necessary.
No, they're not. There's nothing about you had anal sex, or you love someone of the same gender, or you want to get an abortion. There's nothing about or gambling, or using profanity. There's nothing about any of that makes any sort of inherent moral sense.
I disagree.
Well, obviously you do. And we'll wrap up the show there.
I just want to thank you guys for having me. I did enjoy it. I hope we can do it again.
All right.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely do it again. There's a few threads I'd like to pick up at a later date for sure.
I'd enjoy that.
All right, VenomFang. You have a good night, man.
You too. Nice to talk to you finally.
Yeah.
All right. So are we done, or do you want to do anything else?
Nah, I think we're done. I'm pretty worn out. Support the Drunken Peasants podcast by going to audibletrial.com/Drunken Peasants. Get your free audiobook. Today I'm going to recommend Hitch 22, read by Christopher Hitchens. You can find it there on Audible, as well as I think tens of thousands of other titles, maybe hundreds of thousands of other titles. You get a free audiobook and you support our show in the process, so it's a win-win situation. We win, you win, everyone fucking wins. Click the link down below. That's about it.